She stood before him in a blood-red dress, knowing she had 30 days to live. Adrian Moretti didn't make empty threats. His reputation was built on bodies that disappeared and empires that crumbled at his word. But Valentina Cruz had survived worse than men who thought they owned the world. Their wedding wasn't about love. It was a transaction written in power, signed in silence, and sealed with a warning that should have sent her running. Instead, she looked into his cold eyes and smiled, because she knew something he didn't. Sometimes the prey knows how to hunt. If you want to see how this dangerous game ends, stay with me until the final word. Hit that like button and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The cathedral doors groaned open like a warning. Valentina stepped into the cavernous space, her heels clicking against marble that had witnessed 100 years of vows, half of them lies. The red dress had been a deliberate choice. White felt like a surrender, and she'd stopped surrendering the day her father's debts became her inheritance. Her father sat in the front pew, shoulders curved like a question mark, refusing to meet her eyes. Coward. But then again, that's what had brought them here. Antonio Cruz had bet his daughter's future on a poker hand and lost to a man who collected debts the way other people collected wine. The church smelled of old incense and newer fear. Adrian Moretti stood at the altar like he owned it. Hell, maybe he did. The Moretti family owned half of everything worth owning in this city. Ports, politicians, people. He was taller than she'd expected, broader through the shoulders, with the kind of face that made people forget to breathe. Dark hair pushed back from features that could have been carved by someone who understood cruelty as an art form. His eyes found her the moment she started down the aisle. Black eyes. Completely black. Not brown pretending to be dark. Actually black, like looking into a well with no bottom. They tracked her movement with the focused intensity of a predator calculating the exact moment to strike. Valentina had studied photographs, read reports, listened to whispered stories about Adrian Moretti. At 33, he'd turned his family's legitimate real estate empire into a front for operations that made police commissioners retire early and federal prosecutors take sudden vacations. He didn't raise his voice because he didn't need to. When Adrian Moretti spoke, people leaned in to catch every syllable, knowing their lives might depend on it. She reached the altar. The priest looked nervous, his liturgy book trembling in spotted hands. "You came," Adrian said. His voice was low, almost conversational, with an edge that suggested conversation was optional. "You didn't give me a choice." "There's always a choice." His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "You could have run. Your father certainly considered it." Valentina's jaw tightened. "My father makes a lot of considerations. Following through isn't his strength." "No?" Adrian's eyes moved over her face like he was memorizing it, cataloging weaknesses. "But you're here. That suggests you're different. I honor my family's obligations. Even when those obligations include marrying a stranger? Especially then." Something flickered across his expression, surprise maybe, or reassessment. He turned to the priest. "Begin." The ceremony was brief. Traditional vows felt obscene given the circumstances, so they'd settled for the legal minimum. Adrian's responses were clipped, efficient. Valentina's voice stayed steady, even as the weight of what she was doing tried to crush her lungs. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Adrian didn't wait for permission to kiss the bride. His hand came up, fingers curling around the back of her neck with possession that felt territorial. The kiss was hard, claiming, meant to establish exactly what this marriage was. When he pulled back, his thumb brushed her jawline. 30 days, he said, quiet enough that only she could hear. "That's how long most people last in my world before they break. Let's see which one you are, survivor or casualty." Valentina met his stare without flinching. "I guess we'll find out." The reception was worse than the ceremony. The Moretti estate sprawled across 10 acres in the hills outside the city, all stone walls and manicured violence. Guards with earpieces and shoulder holsters dotted the landscape like predatory lawn ornaments. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and people who'd never worked an honest day, but knew exactly how to profit from dishonest ones. Valentina stood beside Adrian as an endless parade of well-wishers offered congratulations that felt like condolences. Crime families from 3 states had sent representatives. She recognized faces from her research: the Castellanos from New York, the Russos from Boston, smaller operations from Philadelphia and Baltimore. They all watched Adrian with a mixture of respect and calculation, trying to figure out what this marriage meant for existing alliances. "Beautiful bride," said a man with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Marco Russo, second in command of the Boston Territory, known for creative approaches to debt collection. "Adrian's a lucky man." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Adrian said. "No, I suppose not." Russo's gaze lingered on Valentina. "Still, quite the prize." Adrian's hand settled at the small of Valentina's back, fingers splaying possessively. "Is there something you want to say, Marco?" The temperature in the immediate vicinity dropped about 10 degrees. Russo's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "Just offering my congratulations. Marriage is a sacred institution, after all." "Nothing about this is sacred," Adrian replied. "Let's not pretend otherwise." After Russo moved away, Valentina turned slightly. "You enjoy that." "Enjoy what?" "Reminding people you're dangerous." Adrian's expression didn't change. "I don't remind them. They already know. I just don't let them forget." "There's a difference?" "Yes." He guided her toward the edge of the room, away from the clusters of conversation. "Reminding suggests uncertainty. I don't deal in uncertainty." They ended up near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the garden. Darkness had fallen, turning the glass into mirrors that reflected the ballroom's golden excess. "Why 30 days?" Valentina asked. "What?" "You said most people last 30 days in your world. Why that number specifically?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, studying their reflection. "That's how long it takes for someone to either adapt or shatter. First week, they're running on adrenaline, still thinking they can handle it. Second week, reality sets in. Third week, they start making mistakes. Fourth week," he shrugged. "Fourth week, they either find their footing or they don't. And if they don't, then they become a problem. I don't keep problems around." Valentina turned to face him directly. "Is that a threat?" "It's an observation." His eyes were unreadable. "You signed up for this, Valentina. Your father's debt in exchange for a ring and a last name. But debt gets paid one way or another. The question is whether you understand what currency I actually deal in." "Control," she said. That surprised him. She could see it in the slight widening of his eyes, the pause before he responded. "Yes." "Then let me be clear about something, Adrian." She kept her voice low, controlled. "I didn't sign up to be controlled. I signed up to settle a debt. Those are different things." "Are they?" "Yes." Valentina stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of charcoal in his irises. "You want to see if I'll break in 30 days? Fine. But don't confuse compliance with breaking. I'll play the role you need me to play. I'll stand beside you at these ridiculous parties and smile at dangerous men and pretend this is something other than a business arrangement, but I won't break. Not for you, not for anyone." For the first time since she'd met him, Adrian smiled. Really smiled. Not the razor-edge smirk he'd been using all day. It transformed his face, made him look almost human. "You're interesting," he said. "I'm expensive. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." Valentina echoed his earlier response. "Interesting suggests I'm trying to capture your attention. Expensive suggests you already paid for it." The smile faded, but something else replaced it, a kind of focused intensity that made her skin prickle. Adrian reached out, catching a strand of her hair between his fingers. "The dress was a good choice," he said. "Red suits you." "It wasn't meant to suit me." "No?" "It was meant to remind you that I'm not prey." Adrian's hand dropped. "I never thought you were." "Liar." His eyebrows rose. "Excuse me?" "You're used to people being afraid of you," Valentina said. "That's what the 30-day warning was about. Establishing fear, setting expectations. But I grew up watching my father gamble away everything we had. I've been afraid every day since I was 16. Your threats don't register anymore. I've already lived through my worst-case scenario." "Your worst-case scenario was marrying me." "My worst-case scenario was watching my mother work herself to death trying to keep us fed while my father pissed away her salary on poker games and promises. This?" She gestured at the ballroom, the opulence. "This is just a different kind of cage. At least it's an expensive one." Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he turned back to the window, shoulder almost touching hers. "Your mother," he said. "Cancer?" Valentina's throat tightened. "How did you know?" "I do my research before acquiring assets." I'm not an asset. Everyone's an asset, Valentina. The question is what they're worth. And what am I worth? I'll let you know in 30 days. The reception wound down around midnight. Guests departed in clusters, expensive cars purring down the circular drive. Valentina's father left without saying goodbye, couldn't even look at her. She watched his sedan disappear into the darkness and felt nothing. When the last guest had gone, Adrian dismissed the staff with a gesture. "This way," he said. He led her through corridors lined with art that probably cost more than her childhood home. The estate was a maze of luxury and security, cameras in every corner, guards stationed at key points, doors that locked automatically behind them. They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor. Adrian's suite occupied the entire east wing. The bedroom was massive, king-size bed centered beneath a chandelier that threw complicated shadows across silk sheets. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city lights below, twinkling like fallen stars. A door led to a bathroom the size of Valentina's old apartment. "Your things are in the closet," Adrian said, shrugging off his jacket. "Elena unpacked for you." "Who's Elena?" "Housekeeper. She'll introduce herself tomorrow." Valentina walked to the window, arms crossed. Behind her, she heard the rustle of clothing, the clink of a belt buckle. Her pulse kicked up despite her earlier bravado. "I'm not sleeping with you tonight," she said. "I didn't ask you to." She turned. Adrian had stripped down to his pants, revealing a torso that looked like it had been designed in a lab. Defined muscles, the kind of build that came from actual physical work rather than gym membership. But it was the scars that caught her attention. A puckered bullet wound high on his shoulder, long slash marks across his ribs, a burn scar that wrapped around his left side. He caught her staring. "Occupational hazards. You've been shot 3 times, stabbed twice, blown up once. The burn was from a warehouse fire in Baltimore. The Castellanos got creative during a territorial dispute." Valentina swallowed. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should know what you married into." Adrian sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees. "This isn't a game, Valentina. The 30-day warning wasn't about breaking you for fun. It was about survival. Most people can't handle the reality of this life. They think they can, but when bodies start appearing or the feds come knocking or rival families decide to send messages, they crack. I won't crack. You say that now. I'll say it in 30 days too." Adrian looked at her, really looked, like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't quite add up. Then he stood, crossing to a dresser and pulling out a shirt. "Here." He tossed it to her. "You'll want something to sleep in?" Valentina caught it reflexively. "I have my own clothes." "Consider it a gesture." "Of what?" "I haven't decided yet." She disappeared into the bathroom to change. Adrian's shirt fell to mid-thigh, soft cotton that smelled like expensive cologne and something darker, more primal. When she emerged, he was already in bed, sheet pulled to his waist, reading something on his phone. Valentina hesitated at the edge of the bed. "I don't bite," Adrian said without looking up. "Not unless asked." "That's not reassuring." "It wasn't meant to be?" He set the phone aside, glancing at her. "Left side or right?" "What? Which side of the bed do you prefer?" It was such an absurdly domestic question given everything else that Valentina almost laughed. "Left." Adrian shifted to the right. "Then that's yours." She slid under the covers, maintaining a careful distance between their bodies. The mattress was obscenely comfortable, the kind that probably cost more than a car. Above them, the chandelier had dimmed to a soft glow. "Can I ask you something?" Valentina said after several minutes of silence. "Depends on the question." "Why did you agree to this? You could have just taken my father's assets, ruined him financially. Why marry me?" Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because assets can be replaced. Family connections are more complicated." "My family doesn't have connections worth anything." "Your family has you." "That doesn't answer my question." He turned his head on the pillow, meeting her eyes in the dimness. "Your father owed me $3 million. He didn't have $3 million, but he had a daughter who speaks 4 languages, has a degree in international business, and spent 2 years working for a nonprofit that operates in territories I need access to. You're not just settling a debt, Valentina. You're an investment." The words should have felt degrading. Instead, they felt oddly clarifying. "So I'm a tool. You're a resource. Whether you become a tool depends on how useful you make yourself." "And if I refuse to be useful?" Adrian's expression hardened. Then we're back to the 30-day timeline. Valentina rolled onto her back, staring at the chandelier. You really are a bastard. Yes. No defensiveness, no apology. But I'm an honest bastard. I told you what this was from the beginning. Most men would have lied, made promises about partnership and respect. I'm giving you the truth. What you do with it is your choice. My choice? The words tasted bitter. I don't feel like I have many of those lately. You had a choice today. You showed up. To save my father from whatever you would have done to him. Probably. Adrian shifted, and suddenly he was closer, propped on one elbow, looking down at her. But you're still here. In my bed, wearing my shirt, pretending this is purely transactional. I think part of you wanted to see what this life looked like. Valentina's breath caught. You don't know anything about what I want, don't I? His hand moved, fingertips tracing the line of her collarbone with surprising gentleness. You wore red to our wedding. You stood at that altar without trembling. You told Marco Russo to his face that nothing about this marriage is sacred. Those aren't the actions of someone being dragged into something. Those are the actions of someone who chose to walk into the fire. Maybe I just didn't want to give you the satisfaction of seeing me scared. Adrian's thumb brushed the hollow of her throat, where her pulse beat visibly. Your heart says otherwise. She should have pushed his hand away, should have reinforced boundaries, maintained distance. Instead, Valentina held his gaze. Fear and attraction aren't mutually exclusive, she said. No. His voice dropped lower. They're usually the same thing. Is that what this is for you, attraction? I haven't decided yet. He withdrew his hand, settling back onto his own pillow. Ask me in 30 days. Valentina released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You're obsessed with that timeline. Timelines create structure. Structure creates predictability. And predictability creates control. Now you're learning. She rolled away from him, facing the window. I'm not going to fall in love with you. I didn't ask you to. Good. Because this is business. You said it yourself. I'm an investment. You are. Then let's keep it that way. If you insist. But even as she said it, Valentina could feel the lie. Something had shifted in the space between them. Some invisible line crossed. Adrian Moretti was dangerous in ways that went beyond violence and power. He understood people, knew how to find the cracks in their armor and exploit them. She'd spent the entire day trying to prove she couldn't be broken. Now, lying in his bed, wearing his shirt, she wondered if breaking was even the right word for what was happening. Morning came too early. Valentina woke to an empty bed and the smell of coffee. She found Adrian in the sitting area adjacent to the bedroom, dressed in a charcoal suit, reading a newspaper that probably didn't include any of his actual business dealings. There's coffee, he said without looking up. And Elena left breakfast in the kitchen. Valentina poured herself a cup, black. Do you always wake up this early? I don't sleep much. Bad dreams? Something like that. He folded the newspaper. We have a meeting at 10. We? You're my wife. That comes with responsibilities. What kind of meeting? Adrian's expression shifted into something harder, more businesslike. The Castellanos are unhappy about a shipping contract. They think I undercut them on port access fees. We're going to explain why they're wrong. By explain, you mean, I mean exactly what I said. This is business, Valentina. Sometimes business requires negotiations. Sometimes it requires demonstrations of force. Today, it requires both. Valentina set down her coffee cup carefully. You want me to come to a meeting where you're going to threaten people. I want you to come to a meeting where you're going to sit beside me and look like you belong there. What I do or don't threaten is irrelevant to your role. And what is my role? Proof that I'm building something beyond myself. Adrian stood, buttoning his jacket. The families respect tradition, marriage, legacy, succession. These things matter in our world. You being there sends a message that you're settled, stable, that I'm invested in the future. He checked his watch. You have an hour. Elena will help you find something appropriate to wear. He left without waiting for a response. Valentina finished her coffee in silence, mind racing. This was the reality she'd signed up for, not just the mansion and the expensive sheets, but the meetings and the messages and the constant performance of power. Elena turned out to be a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and hands that knew how to keep secrets. She helped Valentina navigate the massive closet, pulling out a navy dress that managed to look professional and expensive without being overtly sexual. Mr. Moretti has very specific tastes, Elena said, fastening the zipper. But I think you'll manage just fine. Has he done this before? Done what? The marriage thing, bringing someone into this world. Elena's expression became carefully neutral. Mr. Moretti's personal life is his own business. That's not an answer. No. Elena stepped back, examining Valentina critically. But it's the only one I can give you. Her expression softened slightly. However, I will say this. I've worked for the Moretti family for 23 years. I've seen a lot of people come and go. You're the first one who looks like she might actually survive. Survive or last 30 days? Elena smiled. Maybe both. The meeting took place in a warehouse near the docks. Valentina rode in the back of Adrian's SUV, flanked by guards, who looked like they bench-pressed shipping containers for fun. The city slid past the tinted windows, gleaming downtown towers giving way to industrial sprawl. Ground rules, Adrian said without looking at her. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't react to anything you hear. You sit beside me and you look like this is exactly where you belong. Can you do that? Yes. I need you to be sure, Valentina. The Castellanos aren't just business rivals. They're dangerous people who will exploit any perceived weakness. If they think you're uncomfortable or out of your depth, I said yes. She met his eyes in the rearview mirror. I can handle this. Adrian nodded once. Good. The warehouse was exactly what she expected. Concrete floors, harsh lighting, the smell of salt water and rust. A table had been set up in the center, surrounded by chairs that looked like they'd been stolen from a high school cafeteria. 3 men waited for them. Valentina recognized the one in the center from her research. Vincent Castellano, head of the New York territory, 62 years old, responsible for at least 17 known murders, and probably 3 times that many unknown ones. The men flanking him were younger, harder, with the kind of faces that had seen too much violence to ever look entirely human again. Adrian didn't acknowledge them immediately. He circled the table slowly, forcing them to wait, establishing hierarchy through silence. Finally, he sat. Valentina took the chair beside him. Vincent, Adrian said, you wanted to talk about port fees. Castellano leaned back, fingers steepled. Your memory's getting worse, Adrian. We wanted to talk about you stealing our contracts. I didn't steal anything. I offered better terms. You undercut us by 30%. That's not better terms. That's war. Adrian's expression didn't change. If it was war, Vincent, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be counting your bodies. The temperature in the room dropped. The men flanking Castellano tensed, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Valentina kept her face perfectly neutral even as her heart tried to jackhammer through her ribs. Castellano's eyes flicked to her, then back to Adrian. You brought your bride to a business meeting. How modern. My wife goes where I go. Dangerous habit. Women are liabilities in this business. Some women. Adrian's hand found Valentina's under the table, fingers lacing through hers. The gesture looked possessive, but his grip was steady, grounding. Mine isn't. Castellano smiled. We'll see. The 30-day timer starts now, doesn't it? So that was part of it. The timeline wasn't just Adrian's private test. It was known, discussed, maybe even bet on. What's your point, Vincent? Adrian's voice went colder. My point is that you're making changes. Marriage, expansion, aggressive contract negotiations. It suggests either strength or desperation. I'm trying to figure out which. And I think you're overextended. Castellano leaned forward. I think you married this girl to create an appearance of stability. While you scramble to consolidate territory you can't actually hold. I think the port contracts are a desperate grab for revenue to fund operations that are bleeding money. Adrian was utterly still. You're wrong. Am I? Castellano's gaze shifted to Valentina. Tell me, Mrs. Moretti, do you know what your husband does with women who disappoint him? Every instinct screamed at Valentina to stay silent. But something in Adrian's grip, a subtle pressure, not quite a signal but close, made her reconsider. She met Castellano's eyes. I imagine the same thing he does with men who waste his time. He stops working with them. Castellano blinked. Excuse me? You came here to intimidate me, to see if I'd crack under pressure, which would confirm your theory about my husband's stability. Valentina kept her voice level. But I'm not cracking, which means your theory needs adjustment. So either revise your assessment or stop wasting everyone's time with threats you're not going to follow through on. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Castellano laughed, a genuine, surprised sound. Well, she's got spine, I'll give you that. Adrian's grip on Valentina's hand tightened briefly, then released. Are we done posturing, Vincent? Or do you want to actually discuss business? Business, Castellano sobered. Fine. Here's the reality. You can't sustain a 30% undercut, not long term. So either you're planning something bigger or you're bluffing. Which is it? Neither. Adrian pulled a folder from his jacket, sliding it across the table. I have new infrastructure coming online next quarter. Automated systems, reduced labor costs, direct shipping arrangements with 3 new Asian ports. I'm not undercutting you, Vincent. I'm operating in a different economic model. You can try to match it, or you can find a different revenue stream, but you're not stopping me. Castellano opened the folder, scanning documents. His expression darkened. Where did you get capital for this? Private investments. Bullshit. This kind of overhaul requires 50, 60 million minimum. You didn't have that kind of liquid capital 6 months ago. Adrian smiled. I do now. How? That's not your concern. Valentina kept her expression neutral, but her mind raced. Adrian had married her for access to nonprofit contacts, but what if that wasn't the whole story? What if he'd been assembling pieces for something much larger? Castellano closed the folder, sliding it back. You're playing a dangerous game. I'm playing the only game that matters. Adaptation or extinction. You can evolve with the market, or you can fight change until it buries you. Adrian stood. We're done here. You have 3 days to decide if you want to negotiate a partnership or continue operating in direct competition. After that, I stop being polite. He walked out without waiting for a response. Valentina followed, heart pounding. They were halfway to the SUV when Castellano called out, Adrian! Adrian paused but didn't turn. Your wife was right, Castellano said. I was testing her. She passed. But understand something. The people coming for you won't be as kind. They'll use her, hurt her, destroy her if it gives them leverage. That 30-day timeline? It's not about whether she breaks. It's about whether you can protect her when they come. Adrian looked back over his shoulder. Let them try. They rode in silence for the first 10 minutes. Valentina's hands were shaking despite her best efforts to control them. You did well, Adrian said finally. I didn't do anything. You answered Castellano when he tried to intimidate you. That was smart. Or stupid. I could have made things worse. You didn't. Adrian glanced at her. You read the room correctly, understood the dynamic, and called his bluff. That's not something you can teach. I was terrified. Of course you were. Fear is healthy. Paralysis is the problem. He returned his attention to the window. Castellano was right about one thing. People will come for you now. Being my wife makes you a target. Is that the real reason for the 30-day warning? To see if I can handle being used as leverage? Partially. What's the other part? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, to see if I can handle having someone worth protecting. The answer surprised her. You've never had that before. No, I've had assets, employees, allies, never someone who existed in my world as an equal. I'm not your equal, Adrian. You made that very clear yesterday. Didn't I? He turned to face her fully. You stood in that warehouse and challenged a man who's killed people for less. You didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, didn't look to me for permission. That's not the behavior of someone who sees themselves as inferior. Valentina didn't know what to say to that. They spent the rest of the day in meetings, less dramatic than the Castellano encounter, but equally revealing. Adrian operated with surgical precision, understanding exactly where pressure needed to be applied to get the outcomes he wanted. Valentina sat beside him through all of it, learning the language of power in real time. By evening, she was exhausted. They ate dinner in the estate's formal dining room, served by staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Adrian asked about her nonprofit work, and Valentina found herself talking about infrastructure projects in Southeast Asia, corruption challenges, the complicated intersection of humanitarian work and local politics. You miss it, Adrian observed. Sometimes. It felt like we were actually helping people. And this doesn't. This is about money and power. That's not helping. It's just accumulating. Adrian set down his fork. Every dollar I make is a dollar someone else doesn't make. That changes lives, Valentina. Maybe not in ways you'd consider noble, but change doesn't care about nobility. It cares about force. That's a bleak way to see the world. It's an honest way. You spent 2 years building wells and training farmers. How many of those projects survived after you left? The question hit harder than it should have. Some. And the others? Corruption, equipment failure, shifting political dynamics. She met his eyes. I know the limitations of what I was doing. Then you understand that power, real power, is the only thing that actually creates lasting change. Your wells helped villages. My infrastructure changes regions. The scale is different, but the principle is the same. Except your changes come with body counts. So did yours. You just didn't see them. Valentina flinched. That's not fair. It's completely fair. Every project you built shifted local economies. Someone lost market share. Someone else gained influence. Existing power structures were disrupted. You think that happened without consequences? Without violence? Adrian leaned forward. The difference between us isn't morality, Valentina. It's visibility. I do my damage where people can see it. You did yours behind organizational letterheads and quarterly reports. She wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat, because he wasn't entirely wrong. I hate that you're right about that, she said finally. I usually am. Don't let it go to your head. Adrian smiled. Too late. That night, lying in the darkness with Adrian's breathing steady beside her, Valentina replayed the day. The meeting with Castellano, the way Adrian had gripped her hand under the table, the 30-day timeline that apparently everyone knew about. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. You're going to anyway. What happens after 30 days if I make it? Adrian shifted and she felt him turn toward her in the darkness. I haven't decided yet. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. His hand found hers above the covers, fingers threading through hers like it was becoming habit. This arrangement was supposed to be simple, debt for stability, access for appearances, but you're complicating it. How? By being interesting. You said that yesterday. It's still true. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Most people in this world are predictable. Their motivations are obvious: money, power, survival. You're harder to read. Maybe I'm just better at hiding. Or maybe you haven't decided what you want yet. Valentina turned her head on the pillow, trying to see his face in the dimness. What do you want, Adrian? Control. That's what you said you deal in. I asked what you want. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, to not have to want anything. Wanting creates vulnerability. Everyone wants something. Exactly. His voice went rough. Which is why control is the only reliable currency. That's lonely. Loneliness is safe. Is it? Valentina laced her fingers more tightly with his. Because from where I'm lying, it seems like you're the one who might break in 30 days, not me. Adrian's breath caught. Just barely, but she heard it. Then he pulled her closer, eliminating the careful distance they'd maintained. His arm came around her waist, anchoring her against his chest. You're playing a dangerous game, he murmured against her hair. So are you. Yes. His hand splayed across her stomach, possessive and warm. But I've been playing longer. That doesn't mean you'll win. Doesn't mean you will either. Valentina smiled in the darkness. We'll see. She fell asleep to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, unaware that across the city, in rooms where power was measured in violence and survival, people were already making plans. Castellano wasn't the only one who'd noticed Adrian Moretti's marriage. Others had seen it too, seen the potential weakness, the leverage, the opportunity. The 30-day clock was ticking, but for tonight, in the silence of expensive sheets and complicated truths, Valentina Cruz Moretti allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. It wouldn't last. It never did. But safety was an illusion, and illusions had a shelf life. Valentina discovered this truth on day 7 when she found blood in the kitchen sink. Not a lot. Just enough to stain the porcelain pink where someone had tried to wash it away. Elena was scrubbing at it with the kind of intensity that suggested she'd done this before, many times, and still hated it. What happened? Valentina asked. Elena's shoulders stiffened. Nothing you need to concern yourself with. There's blood in the sink. That seems like my concern. It's handled. Elena rinsed the sponge, avoiding eye contact. Mr. Moretti had a visitor last night. There was a disagreement. A disagreement that ended with bleeding. Yes. Valentina leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Where is he now? Mr. Moretti is in his office. The visitor left through the service entrance. Elena's tone made it clear exactly how the visitor had left. Probably horizontal, possibly in pieces. Does this happen often? Elena finally met her eyes. Mrs. Moretti, if you're going to survive here, you need to understand something. This house has rules. The first rule is that some things aren't your business until Mr. Moretti decides they are. Blood in the sink falls into that category. And if I make it my business anyway, then you'll find out very quickly why most people don't last 30 days. Valentina found Adrian exactly where Elena said he would be, behind a massive desk in an office that looked like it had been designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, dark wood paneling, windows that offered a view of the entire estate. He was reading something on his laptop, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie discarded. There was a bruise forming along his jaw. I didn't hear you come in, he said without looking up. You weren't meant to. Valentina closed the door behind her. Want to tell me about the blood in the kitchen? No. Want to tell me about the bruise on your face? Also no. Adrian finally glanced at her. Elena should have cleaned that up before you saw it. She tried. I'm an early riser. Valentina crossed to the desk, studying him. The bruise was fresh, purpling at the edges. His knuckles were scraped raw. Who was it? A problem that needed solving. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Adrian closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. Why are you here, Valentina? We established ground rules. This falls outside them. Your ground rules included me sitting through business meetings and playing the dutiful wife at social functions. They didn't include ignoring violence that happens under the same roof where I sleep. Then consider the rules amended. What happens in this house when you're not present is not your concern. Valentina's jaw tightened. You're bleeding on your shirt collar. Adrian's hand went to his neck, fingers coming away with a smear of red. He frowned at it like it was a minor inconvenience. Must have missed that. Let me see. It's fine. Adrian. She moved around the desk, not asking permission. Let me see. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he tilted his head, exposing the wound, a shallow cut just below his ear, probably from a blade. Not deep enough to be dangerous, but ugly. Valentina pulled a tissue from the box on his desk, pressing it against the cut. Adrian's hand came up, covering hers. I don't need you to take care of me, he said quietly. Too bad. You married me, remember? That comes with responsibilities. She threw his words from their first morning back at him. Something flickered across his expression, surprise, maybe amusement. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. You're stubborn. You're bleeding. I've bled before. That doesn't make it acceptable. Valentina held pressure on the wound, acutely aware of how close they were standing. She could smell his cologne mixed with something sharper, adrenaline, maybe, or the copper tang of blood. What did he want? Who? Your visitor. The one who disagreed with you so violently he ended up leaving through the service entrance. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Elena talks too much. Elena barely talks at all. I inferred. Valentina lifted the tissue, checking the cut. The bleeding had slowed. You're going to need antiseptic. There's a first aid kit in the bathroom. She found it in a cabinet that also contained enough medical supplies to run a small emergency room. Suture kits, antibiotics, prescription painkillers, trauma shears, the kind of inventory that suggested injuries were routine. When she returned, Adrian had removed his shirt entirely. The morning light through the windows highlighted every scar on his torso. The bullet wounds she'd noticed on their wedding night, plus others she hadn't seen in the darkness. A long, jagged line across his ribs that looked like it had required serious stitches. A circular burn on his shoulder that might have been from a cigar or a blowtorch. You collect these like souvenirs, Valentina said, opening the antiseptic. Occupational hazards? We covered this already. That doesn't make it less disturbing. She dabbed at the cut on his neck. Adrian winced but didn't pull away. The person who did this, are they alive? Do you want them to be? The question caught her off guard. I don't know. Honest answer. Adrian's hand settled at her waist, steadying her as she worked. Most people would lie, say of course they want everyone to live. You're admitting you don't care. I care. I just don't know if I care enough to want mercy for someone who hurt you. Hurt is a strong word. He got one cut in before I put him down. Put him down. Valentina stepped back, studying his face. Like an animal. He came here to kill me, Valentina. Mercy wasn't on the table. Who sent him? That's what I was finding out when he decided a knife was easier than conversation. Adrian stood, crossing to the bar cart in the corner. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey, despite the early hour. He was Russo's. Marco's trying to test boundaries, see if yesterday's meeting created any weaknesses. Because of me. Because of the appearance of me having attachments. He drank half the whiskey in one swallow. Castellano wasn't the only one watching. Russo sees an opportunity. New wife means divided attention, possible leverage. He sent someone to probe defenses. Valentina's stomach dropped. They're coming after me. They're thinking about it. There's a difference. Adrian refilled his glass. But yes, your presence has created complications. I told you this would happen. You told me I'd be a target. You didn't tell me people would show up at the house with knives. Would it have changed anything? You still would have married me. Your father's debt would still exist. The timeline would still be running. He met her eyes over the rim of his glass. You knew what you were walking into. Knowing and experiencing are different things. Yes. Adrian set down the glass, closing the distance between them. Which is why most people break. Theoretical danger is manageable. Actual blood is harder to rationalize. Valentina lifted her chin. I'm not breaking. No. His hand came up, fingers tracing the line of her jaw. You're angry instead. That's better. Better how? Anger is useful. Fear paralyzes, but anger drives action. His thumb brushed her lower lip. What do you want to do with it? The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Valentina's pulse kicked up, heat pooling low in her stomach despite everything. I want to understand the rules, she said. Real rules, not the sanitized version you gave me on our wedding night. If people are coming after me, I need to know how this world actually works. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he stepped back, creating distance. All right, real rules. First, trust no one outside this house. Not business associates, not social acquaintances, definitely not family members. Everyone has an agenda. Including you. Especially me. No hesitation. Second, never go anywhere without security. I don't care if you're running to the corner store, you take guards. Third, learn to shoot. There's a range in the basement. Marcus will teach you. Who's Marcus? Head of security. Former Marine, 3 tours, dishonorably discharged for reasons he'll tell you about if he likes you. Adrian moved back to his desk, pulling out a drawer. He extracted a handgun, small, matte black, designed for concealment. Fourth, carry this. Always. Valentina stared at the weapon. I don't know how to use that. That's what Marcus is for, but even untrained, having it sends a message. He held it out, grip first. Take it. She did, surprised by the weight. The metal was cold against her palm. Safety's here. Adrian's hands covered hers, guiding her fingers. Thumb release. You push it forward to fire. Point at what you want to stop existing and pull the trigger. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. No, but it's necessary. He released her hand, stepping back. Fifth rule, and this is the most important one. If someone takes you, if you're grabbed or kidnapped or used as leverage, you fight. You don't wait for rescue. You don't negotiate. You don't comply hoping for mercy. You do whatever it takes to survive until I can reach you. The intensity in his voice made Valentina's breath catch. You'd come for me. Yes. Why? I'm just an investment, remember? A resource. Adrian's expression went hard. Because you're mine now, and I protect what's mine. The possessiveness should have bothered her. Instead, it settled something in Valentina's chest, a kind of certainty she hadn't felt since her mother died. Okay, she said. Okay what? Okay. I'll learn to shoot. I'll carry the gun. I'll follow your rules. She met his eyes. But I want something in return. Adrian's eyebrow rose. You're negotiating? You said I was an investment. Investments should appreciate in value. That means leveraging advantages. A smile ghosted across his mouth. What do you want? Access to your business operations, not the illegal parts. I don't need that kind of exposure. But the legitimate infrastructure. Real estate holdings, shipping contracts, the automated systems you told Castellano about. I want to understand how it all fits together. Why? Because if I'm going to be useful, I need to know what I'm working with. You married me for my nonprofit contacts and international business background. Let me use them properly. Adrian was quiet, considering, then, "You'll report directly to me. Anything you learn, anyone you meet through those operations, I know about it immediately." "Agreed. And you don't make decisions without consultation. This is observation, not authority. For now." His eyes narrowed. "For now? If I prove myself useful, we renegotiate." Valentina didn't back down. "That's how business works, isn't it? Performance-based advancement." Adrian laughed. Genuinely laughed. The sound warm and surprised. "You're something else." "Is that a yes?" "It's a conditional yes. Prove you can handle the basics first, then we'll discuss expansion." He glanced at his watch. "Marcus will be in the gym at 1400. Don't be late." 1400? 2 p.m. Military time. Get used to it. Everyone on my security team uses it. Valentina tucked the gun into her waistband, feeling absurdly like she was playing dress-up in someone else's dangerous life. "Anything else I should know?" "Yes?" Adrian's expression sobered. "The man who came here last night, before he died, he confirmed that Russo's making a move. Not immediately, but soon. The next 2 weeks are going to be complicated." "Complicated how?" "The kind of complicated where you don't leave the estate without armed escorts, and I sleep with my gun on the nightstand." He picked up his laptop, clearly dismissing her. "We have a charity gala Friday night. Black tie, high society, absolutely crawling with people who'd love to see me fail. You'll need to be perfect." "I'm always perfect." "No." Adrian looked up, something dark and hungry in his eyes. "You're interesting. Perfect is boring. Interesting keeps me guessing." Valentina left before she could do something stupid like close the distance between them again. Marcus turned out to be exactly what she'd expected. 6'3", built like a tank, with a shaved head and eyes that missed nothing. He was waiting in the gym when she arrived, arms crossed over a chest that looked like it could stop bullets. "Mrs. Moretti," he said. No inflection, just statement. "Valentina. I call the boss Mr. Moretti. His wife gets the same respect." Marcus gestured toward the shooting range built into the back wall. "You ever handle a weapon before?" "No." "Good. No bad habits to unlearn." He pulled out a Glock similar to the one Adrian had given her. "First rule, never point this at anything you don't intend to destroy. Not to scare, not to threaten, not to make a point. If it's aimed, it's firing. Understood?" "Yes." "Second rule, finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Your natural instinct will be to keep it there, but that's how accidents happen." Marcus demonstrated, finger resting along the side of the barrel. "Like this." They spent 2 hours on basics. Stance, grip, sight alignment, trigger control. Marcus was patient but demanding, correcting her form with the kind of precision that came from years of training people to survive. "You're tensing your shoulders," he said for the 4th time. "Relax. The weapon does the work, not your muscles." Valentina adjusted, rolled her shoulders back. The target 20 feet away had a decent grouping, not tight, but all the shots were hitting center mass. "Better." Marcus moved beside her. "Now explain why Mr. Moretti wants you armed." The question caught her off guard. "Because people are targeting me." "Wrong. People are always targeting the people he cares about. That's not new." Marcus reloaded her weapon, handed it back. "Try again." Valentina lined up another shot, thinking, "Because he can't be with me all the time." Closer, but still wrong. Marcus waited until she'd emptied the clip. "He wants you armed because he's acknowledging you're part of this now. Really part of it. Not just window dressing or a contract obligation. You're in the game." "Is that good or bad?" "Depends on whether you survive." Marcus took the gun, performing a safety check. "I've worked for the Morettis for 8 years. I've seen a lot of people come through that house. Most of them were using Mr. Moretti for something. Money, protection, connections. None of them lasted. Because they broke in 30 days? Because they didn't understand that this life requires commitment. You can't be half in. The moment you hesitate, the moment you question whether you belong here, that's when you become a liability." Marcus's eyes met hers. "Mr. Moretti doesn't keep liabilities." "He told me that." "Did he tell you what happens to them?" "No." "Good. That means he doesn't want you thinking of yourself that way." Marcus holstered his weapon. "Same time tomorrow. We'll work on moving targets." Valentina spent the afternoon reviewing Adrian's legitimate business holdings, or at least the ones he'd given her access to. Real estate portfolios across 6 states, shipping contracts with companies she'd never heard of, but that apparently moved billions in goods annually, infrastructure development projects that reminded her uncomfortably of her nonprofit work. It was all legal, technically, but there were gaps in the paperwork, places where money disappeared and reappeared in different forms, shell companies nested inside other shell companies like Russian dolls of financial obfuscation. She was cross-referencing a shipping manifest when Adrian appeared in the doorway. "Finding anything interesting?" he asked. "Several things. Want me to list them?" "Please." Valentina turned her laptop screen toward him. "These 3 shipping contracts, the pricing doesn't make sense. You're moving containerized goods at a loss unless there's something else being transported that's not on the manifest." "Go on." "The real estate holdings in Baltimore, 6 properties purchased through different LLCs, but all renovated by the same contractor at the same time. That's not coincidence, that's coordination. You're building infrastructure for something." Adrian leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. And the automated port systems you mentioned to Castellano, the capital for that came from liquidating assets in 3 other cities. You're consolidating, pulling resources into specific territories. Valentina met his eyes. "You're preparing for expansion, major expansion." "Very good. What am I missing?" "Nothing." Adrian crossed to her, spinning the chair so she faced him. "You just identified 3 years of strategic planning in one afternoon. That's exactly why I married you." The nonprofit contacts were a cover story, partially. They're useful but not essential. His hands braced on the armrests, caging her in. "What I needed was someone who could see patterns, make connections, understand complex operations without needing everything spelled out. Most people in this business are specialized. They know violence or money laundering or political corruption. They can't see how it all fits together." "But you think I can?" "I know you can. You just proved it." Valentina's pulse quickened. "What are you planning, Adrian?" "To rebuild this entire ecosystem from the ground up. The old families, Castellano, Russo, the others, they're operating on outdated models, territory and intimidation and bodies. It's inefficient." He straightened, pacing. "But if you control the infrastructure, the ports, the shipping lanes, the financial systems, you don't need territory. You control flow. And controlling flow means everyone else operates at your discretion. That's audacious. That's necessary. The world's changing. In 10 years, the families still operating on old models will be extinct. I'm positioning us to survive." "Us." Valentina caught the word. "Not you. Us." Adrian paused. "Yes. That's different from how you've been talking about this arrangement. Things change." He wouldn't quite meet her eyes. "You're proving more adaptable than expected. Is that your way of saying I'm passing the 30-day test? It's day 7. Don't get cocky." But there was something softer in his expression, something that looked almost like approval. The gala on Friday was everything Adrian had promised: excessive, political, crawling with danger dressed in designer clothing. Valentina wore midnight blue, a dress that Elena had selected with the kind of strategic precision usually reserved for military operations. It was elegant without being ostentatious, expensive without being gaudy, the kind of dress that said, "I belong here," without screaming for attention. Adrian wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than her father's car. He looked dangerous and polished in equal measure, the kind of man who commanded rooms just by entering them. "Remember," he murmured as they walked up the red carpet, "you're here to be seen, not heard. Let me handle conversations. You just smile and look like you're exactly where you should be." "I am exactly where I should be." His hand tightened on her waist. "Yes, but most of these people don't need to know you believe that yet." The ballroom was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, a string quartet playing in the corner. Every major family had sent representatives. Valentina spotted Castellano near the bar, Russo holding court by the windows, faces she recognized from Adrian's files mingling like this was a normal social event instead of a gathering of the city's most dangerous people. "Adrian," a woman's voice, cultured and cold, "how domestic of you to actually bring your wife." Valentina turned to find a woman in red, late 30s, beautiful in the way that required significant maintenance, with eyes that calculated value, like a jeweler examining stones. "Sophia," Adrian's tone gave nothing away. "Still working for your father, or have you finally convinced him to retire?" "Daddy doesn't retire, you know that." Sophia's gaze slid to Valentina. "And you must be the famous Valentina Cruz." "Sorry. Moretti now, isn't it? I keep forgetting Adrian actually went through with the wedding. Sofia Castellano, Adrian said, Vincent's daughter. She runs their legal operations. Legal being a generous description, Sophia said with a smile that had teeth. I make problems disappear through paperwork instead of violence. Less messy. Her eyes traveled over Valentina's dress. That's beautiful. Custom? Elena chose it. Elena has excellent taste, almost as good as Adrian's, and his is notoriously difficult to satisfy. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Adrian's hand pressed against Valentina's back. A warning, maybe, or a claim. If you're trying to make her uncomfortable, Sophia, you'll have to try harder. Valentina doesn't rattle easily. Is that so? Sophia's smile widened. How refreshing. The last woman Adrian brought to one of these events spent half the night in the bathroom crying. I don't cry in public, Valentina said evenly. We'll see about that. The night's young? Sophia raised her champagne glass in mock toast. Enjoy the gala. And Adrian. Daddy wants a word later. Something about those port contracts. She drifted away, leaving tension in her wake. Ex-girlfriend? Valentina asked. Business associate. Who you slept with? Adrian's jaw tightened. Past tense. Years ago. Irrelevant. She doesn't think it's irrelevant. Sofia Castellano thinks everything is relevant if it gives her leverage. Ignore her. But ignoring Sofia proved impossible. The woman circled back throughout the evening, always with another pointed comment, another subtle dig. By the time dinner was served, Valentina's patience was wearing thin. They were seated at a table with 3 other couples, all connected to various family operations, all watching Valentina like she was a fascinating science experiment. The conversation was superficial, carefully avoiding anything actually important, until Russo's wife brought up children. You must be thinking about starting a family, she said, smiling at Valentina. Adrian's what, 33? Perfect age for fatherhood. Valentina felt Adrian go still beside her. We haven't discussed it, she said carefully. Oh, but you should. Children are so important in our world. Legacy, you know. Continuity. The woman's smile sharpened. Of course, that requires a certain level of commitment. Some marriages are more temporary than others. The 30-day timeline. She was talking about the 30-day timeline. Our marriage is as permanent as any other, Valentina said. Is it? Sophia had appeared behind them, champagne glass in hand. Forgive me for being direct, but everyone here knows the arrangement, your father's debt for Adrian's stability. It's practically a business merger. Those don't usually involve nurseries and baby names. The table had gone quiet, everyone watching. Adrian's hand found Valentina's under the table, fingers lacing through hers. Our personal plans are our business, Sophia. Of course they are. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Sophia leaned closer, voice dropping. You can't build a legacy on a transaction, Adrian. Eventually, you'll have to decide if she's worth keeping for reasons beyond her father's debt. Valentina felt something snap inside her. Not anger exactly, but a kind of crystalline clarity. She stood, Adrian's hand still in hers. Excuse us. She pulled him onto the dance floor before he could object, one hand on his shoulder, the other still gripping his fingers. The orchestra was playing something slow, classical. What are you doing? Adrian asked quietly. Giving them something to talk about that isn't business transactions. Valentina met his eyes. Dance with me like you actually want to be here. I don't dance. You do tonight. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then his arm came around her waist, pulling her close enough that she could feel his heart beating against her chest. They moved together, not quite in sync, but close enough. They're trying to get under your skin, Adrian said. I know. You're letting them. No, I'm controlling the narrative. Valentina's fingers tightened on his shoulder. Right now, every person in this room is watching us. They're wondering if this is real or performance. Let them wonder. Adrian's eyes searched hers. What are we doing, Valentina? Surviving 30 days. She leaned closer, lips nearly brushing his ear. Unless you've changed your mind about what happens after. His grip on her waist tightened almost painfully. You're playing with fire. So are you. The song ended. They stood there for a heartbeat too long, neither moving. Then Adrian stepped back, composure sliding into place like armor. We should go, he said. They made their exit amid whispers and speculation. Valentina could feel eyes tracking them all the way to the car. The drive home was silent, tense. Adrian stared out the window, jaw tight, clearly working through something. I shouldn't have pulled you onto the dance floor, Valentina said finally.
No, you should have. He turned to look at her. Sophia was right about one thing. People need to believe this is more than a transaction.
What you did tonight, that helped. Even though it complicated things. Especially because it complicated things. Adrian's expression was unreadable. Complications make you harder to predict. That's useful. Is that all I am? Useful? No. The word came out rough. But I don't know what else to call you yet. They pulled through the estate gates. Home. Except it didn't quite feel like home. More like a fortress where Valentina was learning to live alongside danger. Inside, Adrian poured himself whiskey, offering her one. She took it. How many more of these events? She asked. As many as it takes to consolidate the image we're building. He drank, grimaced. The families need to see us as a unit. That means appearances, meetings, the whole performance. It didn't feel like a performance tonight. No. Adrian set down his glass. It didn't. The admission hung between them, heavy with implication. Valentina closed the distance, stopping inches from him. What happens in 23 days, Adrian? When the timeline runs out? I don't know. You're lying. Yes. He reached out, fingers tracing her cheekbone. I know exactly what I want to happen. I'm just not sure I should want it. Why not? Because wanting things makes you vulnerable. And vulnerability in this world gets you killed. His thumb brushed her lower lip. You're a complication I didn't plan for. You married me. For strategic reasons. And now? Adrian's eyes went dark. Now those reasons feel insufficient. He kissed her then, not the claiming kiss from their wedding, but something slower, deeper, edged with hunger that had been building for 7 days. Valentina's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, needing the contact like oxygen. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. This changes everything, he said. I know. We should stop. We should. Neither of them moved. Finally, Adrian stepped back, putting safe distance between them. Not like this. Not when we're both running on adrenaline and whiskey. Since when do you have restraint? Since I started worrying about what happens if I don't. He ran a hand through his hair, looking more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. Go to bed, Valentina, before I change my mind about being careful. She went, but sleep was impossible. She lay in the darkness, hyper-aware of Adrian moving around in the bathroom, then settling on his side of the bed. They maintained their careful distance, but it felt different now, charged, deliberate, like they were both fighting the same gravity. Valentina, Adrian said quietly. Yes? 23 days. Whatever happens, we figure it out together. She rolled toward him, finding his hand in the darkness. Together. His fingers tightened around hers. Together. Outside, the city glittered with 1,000 dangerous promises. Inside, two people who'd started as a transaction were becoming something neither of them had words for yet. The 30-day clock kept ticking. But maybe, Valentina thought as she finally drifted toward sleep, breaking wasn't the only possible ending. Maybe some things were meant to be rebuilt into something stronger. They were both wrong about the rebuild part. Things got worse first. Day 14 arrived with gunfire at 3 in the morning. Valentina woke to Adrian's hand over her mouth and his voice in her ear, sharp and controlled. Don't scream, don't move. Stay exactly where you are. He was already out of bed, gun in hand, moving toward the window with the fluid precision of someone who'd done this before. Outside, shouts erupted, followed by more gunfire. Rapid bursts that echoed across the estate grounds. Valentina's heart slammed against her ribs. The gun Adrian had given her was in the nightstand drawer. She reached for it, hands shaking. I said don't move. Adrian didn't look at her, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the glass. Marcus has the perimeter. This is contained. Contained doesn't sound like the right word when people are shooting. Contained means they're not in the house yet. He pressed something on his phone. Marcus, status. Valentina couldn't hear the response, but she watched Adrian's expression shift, calculation, then something colder. How many? A pause. Copy that. I'm coming down. You're not leaving me here, Valentina said. Yes, I am. The safest place right now is this room. It's reinforced, cameras everywhere, panic button behind the headboard. Adrian moved to the closet,
pulling on pants and a shirt with mechanical efficiency. You don't move until I come back or Marcus gives you the all clear. Adrian, he crossed to her, gripped her face between both hands. Listen to me very carefully. This is Russo making his move. We knew it was coming. I need you to trust that I can handle it, which means I need you to stay here and not become a liability I have to protect while dealing with armed men on my property. Can you do that? Valentina's throat was tight, but she nodded. Good girl. He kissed her forehead, quick and hard. Then he was gone, door locking automatically behind him. The gunfire intensified. Valentina pressed herself against the headboard, gun gripped in both hands the way Marcus had taught her, listening to her own heartbeat drown out rational thought. Somewhere below, men were trying to kill her husband. Men who'd come here because of the exact complications she'd helped create by making their arrangement look real at the gala. Sophia's voice echoed in her memory. You can't build a legacy on a transaction. Maybe not, but apparently you could start a war with one. The shooting stopped. Silence rushed in to fill the space, somehow worse than the noise. Valentina counted her breaths, trying to slow her racing pulse. 1 minute, 3, 5. Her phone buzzed. Text from Adrian. Contained. Stay put. She waited. 10 minutes stretched into 20. Her hands were cramping around the gun when she finally heard footsteps in the hallway. Measured, controlled, definitely not running from anything. The door opened. Adrian stood there, shirt torn at the shoulder, smear of blood across his jaw that probably wasn't his. His eyes found her immediately, scanning for damage. You're okay, he said. Statement, not question. I'm fine. You're bleeding. Not my blood. He crossed to the bathroom, running water in the sink. Valentina followed, watched him scrub red from his hands with the kind of thoroughness that suggested this was routine. How many? She asked. 4. Russo sent them over the east wall, probably figured weekend security would be lighter. Adrian dried his hands, meeting her eyes in the mirror. They were wrong. Are they dead? 3 are. 4th one's in the basement answering questions. The casual way he said it made Valentina's stomach drop. Questions. About who sent them, what the objective was, whether this was reconnaissance or an actual assassination attempt. Adrian turned to face her. Standard protocol. There's nothing standard about torturing someone in your basement. I'm not torturing him. Marcus is. He said it like there was a meaningful distinction. I'm just going to verify the information once Marcus is done. Valentina set down the gun she'd been clutching, hands shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. This is because of what I did at the gala. Because I made them think we're actually... No. Adrian cut her off. This is because Russo's been planning a move for months and the gala gave him a convenient excuse to accelerate his timeline. You didn't cause this, Valentina. You just gave him cover to do what he was always going to do. That's a thin distinction. It's an important one. He stepped closer, hands settling on her shoulders. You need to understand something. This life, these conflicts, they're not about you specifically. They're about power and territory and men who can't accept that the world is changing. Russo sees my expansion as a threat. He'd be coming after me regardless of whether I had a wife or not. But having one gives him leverage. Potentially, if I let it. Adrian's grip tightened. Which I won't. You're not leverage, Valentina. You're not a weakness. You're... He stopped, jaw working like he was physically wrestling with the words. I'm what? She asked quietly. I don't know yet. Something I didn't account for. His thumb brushed her collarbone. Marcus wants me downstairs. Stay in the room until sunrise, then move to my office. Don't go anywhere without security, understood? Yes. He left. Again. Valentina stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection, trying to reconcile the woman looking back at her with who she'd been 2 weeks ago. That version of herself wouldn't have held a gun steady while men died on the grounds. Wouldn't have calmly asked about casualties like she was discussing weather. This version did both without flinching. She wasn't sure what that said about her. Sunrise came eventually. Valentina showered, dressed in dark jeans and a sweater that felt like armor, made her way downstairs flanked by 2 guards whose names she didn't know. The estate looked normal. No bodies, no blood, no evidence that anything violent had occurred. But there were more guards. And the ones she passed all had the kind of tension that came from barely controlled adrenaline. Adrian's office door was open. She found him at his desk, laptop open, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what Russo says his intentions were, he was saying. 4 armed men came over my wall.
That's not a misunderstanding, Vincent. That's an act of war. Either you bring him in line or I handle it my way. Valentina couldn't hear Castellanos' response, but she watched Adrian's expression go harder. You have 48 hours to deliver a response. After that, I'm done negotiating. He ended the call, tossed the phone onto the desk. Valentina, sit. She took the chair across from him. What did he say? That Russo's claiming it was a protective measure, that he'd heard rumors about my stability and wanted to verify I could still defend my territory. Adrian's laugh was hollow. Load of shit, but it gives the families political cover to not take sides yet. And in 48 hours? Either Russo publicly backs down and pays reparations, or we go to war properly. No more probing attacks, no more testing boundaries. Actual war. Valentina absorbed that. Can you win? Yes, but it'll be expensive, in money, in lives, in political capital. I'd rather spend on expansion than conflicts. Adrian leaned back, studying her. You're taking this well. What's the alternative, falling apart? Most people would. I'm not most people. She met his eyes. You keep testing me on that. At some point, you're going to have to accept I mean it. Something shifted in his expression, the hard edges softening just slightly. The man in the basement confirmed it was Russo's order, direct, explicit, with a bonus structure for successfully bringing you back alive. Valentina's breath caught. They were here for me. Yes. Russo's operating theory is that taking you removes my stabilizing factor and creates chaos he can exploit. Adrian stood, moved to the window. He's not entirely wrong. Having you here has changed my risk assessment. I'm making different decisions than I would if I were alone. Different how? More conservative, more protective. He glanced back at her. I didn't pursue Russo immediately last night because my first priority was making sure you were secure. 6 months ago, I would have gone straight for his throat. That hesitation could be interpreted as weakness or strategic patience. In this world, they're often the same thing. Adrian turned fully to face her. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. All right. Do you want out? I can arrange protection, relocate you somewhere Russo can't reach, keep you safe until this resolves. Your father's debt would still be settled. You'd be free of this. Valentina's heart was suddenly loud in her ears. You'd let me go. If that's what you want, yes. Why? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Because keeping you here when you don't want to be makes me the villain in a different kind of story. And I've done a lot of terrible things, Valentina, but forcing someone to stay in a war zone isn't going to be one of them. She stood, crossing to where he was standing. What do you want me to do? That's not how this works. I'm not making this decision for you. Yes, you are. You just asked if I wanted out, which means you've already calculated what happens if I say yes versus if I say no. Valentina held his gaze. So tell me, what happens if I stay? Adrian's jaw tightened. If you stay, you're in it completely. No halfway, no protected observer status. You become part of the operations, part of the strategy, part of everything. That means risk, danger, decisions that have consequences. And if I go, then you're safe. And I lose the only person in this organization who sees things the way I do. His hand came up, fingers threading through her hair. I lose you. The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. 16 days, Valentina said quietly. You told me to give you 30 days. We're barely halfway through. Circumstances have changed. No, you have. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat of him. You're offering me an exit because you're scared of what happens if something happens to me. I don't get scared. Liar. She put her hand on his chest, felt his heartbeat racing. You're terrified, because 16 days ago I was just a transaction, and now I'm something you'd actually grieve if you lost. Adrian caught her wrist, thumb pressing against her pulse point. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Valentina tilted her head back, meeting his eyes. Then prove me wrong. Tell me you feel nothing. Tell me I'm still just an investment you can liquidate when convenient. You're not... He stopped, throat working. This is a mistake. Probably. We should maintain professional boundaries. Too late for that. Valentina, she kissed him. Not the careful kiss from the gala, not the restrained moment after the whiskey. This was desperate, hungry, fueled by adrenaline and fear and 2 weeks of tension that had been building toward inevitable collapse.
Adrian made a sound low in his throat, hands fisting in her hair as he kissed her back with equal intensity. They broke apart, breathing hard. Adrian's forehead pressed against hers, eyes closed. "You're staying," he said. Not a question. Yes, even knowing what that means. Especially knowing what it means. Valentina's hands gripped his shirt. "I'm not running, Adrian. Not from Russo, not from this life, not from whatever this thing between us is becoming. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I know. People are going to use you to get to me. Let them try." Adrian pulled back, searching her face. Whatever he found there made something in his expression crack open. "You're insane. You married me. Worst decision I ever made." But he was smiling when he said it, the kind of smile that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. Liar. Yes. He kissed her again, softer this time. Complete liar. The moment shattered when Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Boss, we've got a problem." Adrian's entire demeanor shifted, softness replaced by cold efficiency. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where your father-in-law just showed up at the front gate demanding to see his daughter." Valentina's stomach dropped. "My father's here?" "With 3 cars and what looks like hired muscle." Marcus's expression was grim. "He's making a scene, cameras everywhere, probably reporters by now." Adrian's jaw went tight. "He's creating a public spectacle, so I can't just turn him away." "That'd be my assessment. Bring him to the garden. Public enough that he can't claim I'm threatening him, controlled enough that we limit the circus." Adrian looked at Valentina. "You don't have to see him if you don't want to." "No, I should." She straightened her shoulders. "He's here because of what happened last night. News travels fast." "Too fast." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Which means someone fed him information specifically to create this situation." They met Antonio Cruz in the garden 20 minutes later. Valentina's father looked worse than she remembered. Hollow-eyed, unshaven, wearing an expensive suit that hung wrong on his frame. The 3 men with him were exactly what Marcus had described. Hired muscle, probably expensive, definitely out of their depth. "Valentina," her father's voice cracked. "Thank God you're alive." "Why wouldn't I be?" "The news this morning, gunfire at the estate, people dead, rumors about attacks." Antonio moved toward her, but Adrian's guard shifted position, blocking him. "I came as soon as I heard." "You came because someone told you to come," Adrian said. "Who was it? Russo? One of his people?" Antonio's expression flickered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Someone fed you information about last night's incident and convinced you that your daughter was in danger. They probably suggested you make a public appearance, create pressure for me to send her away." Adrian's voice was cold. "You're being used, Antonio. I'm here because my daughter was almost killed because of your business." "Your daughter was almost killed because of your debt," Adrian corrected. "Let's be clear about causation. You gambled away money you didn't have to people you couldn't pay. I gave you a way out that didn't involve finding you in pieces. Everything that's happened since is a direct result of your choices." "I didn't ask for this." "No, but you accepted it. You showed up to the wedding, signed the papers, took the money I gave you to settle your other debts." Adrian stepped forward, and even his guards looked wary. "What you don't get to do is show up here 2 weeks later pretending to be a concerned father when you've spent those 2 weeks spending the blood money." Valentina watched her father's face crumble. "Is that what you think of me? It's what I know about you. I've had people tracking your movement since the wedding. 3 trips to Atlantic City, 2 to the dog tracks, 1 very expensive dinner with a woman who's definitely not your late wife." Adrian's smile was razor sharp. "You haven't called once to check on Valentina. You didn't attend the charity gala where she made her public debut. You've shown exactly 0 interest in her well-being until someone convinced you it would be profitable to care. That's not—" Antonio looked at Valentina, pleading, "You have to know I care about you." "Do I?" The words came out colder than she'd intended. "Because Adrian's right. You haven't called. You left the wedding without saying goodbye. You've made 0 effort to see if I was okay. I was giving you space. You were avoiding guilt." Valentina felt something inside her crystallize, harden. "You sold me to settle your debts, and you can't even own that decision honestly. You have to pretend it's something else, something noble." "I did what I had to do to keep us alive." "No. You did what you had to do to keep yourself alive.
Don't pretend I was ever part of that equation. She moved to stand beside Adrian, a deliberate choice. I'm staying here, not because I have to, but because I want to. So whatever you were paid to come here and say, whatever performance you're supposed to give for whoever's watching, you can stop now. Antonio's face went through several expressions: shock, hurt, anger, finally settling on something that looked like resignation. They said you'd say that. Who's they? Adrian asked. I don't know. A man called me this morning, told me about the attack, said you'd probably send Valentina away to keep her safe. He suggested I could petition to have her placed in protective custody, claim the marriage was under duress. Antonio wouldn't meet their eyes. He said there'd be money in it if I made enough noise. How much? 200,000. Adrian laughed, sharp and humorless. You're cheap. I'm almost insulted on your behalf. He gestured to Marcus. Escort Mr. Cruz off the property. Make sure his hired muscle understands that if they come back, we'll assume hostile intent. Wait. Valentina stepped forward. How much do you still owe? Total. All debts. Her father blinked. What? You heard me. How much? I don't. Maybe 300,000 scattered across. I'll cover it. The words were out before she'd fully thought them through. All of it. Every debt. But you take the money and you disappear. New city, new life, actual therapy for the gambling addiction you refuse to acknowledge. And you never contact me again. Antonio stared at her. You do that? I'm doing it so I never have to see you show up here again, trying to weaponize our relationship. Valentina's voice was steady. You're my father, and I don't want you dead. But I also don't want you in my life, so take the money, get clean, and go be someone else's problem. Valentina, those are the terms. Accept them or leave with nothing. Antonio looked between her and Adrian, probably calculating whether he could negotiate for more. Whatever he saw in their faces convinced him otherwise. All right, he said quietly. I accept. Adrian made a gesture. One of his people appeared with a tablet, already pulling up financial transfers. Accounts? Antonio provided them, hands shaking. Within 5 minutes, the money was moving. $300,000 to clear his debts, another $50,000 as a relocation fund. Probably more than he deserved, definitely more than he'd earned. But it was worth it to watch him leave. That was generous, Adrian said once the cars had disappeared down the drive. That was self-preservation. He's a liability. Better to pay him off than deal with whatever schemes someone could convince him to run. Valentina turned to face him. Can I expense that to the household budget? You can expense that to whatever you want. You just handled a hostage situation like a negotiation. Adrian's hand found the small of her back. I'm impressed. Don't be. I just bought off my father so I wouldn't have to watch him destroy himself slowly. She leaned into his touch, suddenly exhausted. That's not impressive. That's sad. It's survival, same as everything else we do here. They went back inside. The rest of the day dissolved into meetings and phone calls and the machinery of managing crisis. Castellano called twice, each time with updates on Russo's position. Other families reached out, testing loyalties, trying to figure out which side would benefit them most. Through it all, Valentina sat in Adrian's office, learning the choreography of power in real time. She took notes, made observations, occasionally offered insights that made Adrian pause and reconsider his approach. By evening, they had a plan. Russo would be given one chance to back down publicly. If he refused, Adrian would hit 3 of his operations simultaneously, surgical strikes designed to cripple his infrastructure without triggering full-scale war. It's aggressive, Adrian admitted, reviewing the logistics with Marcus and 2 other senior security people. But it sends the right message. We don't tolerate attacks on our territory. What about collateral damage? One of the men asked. Minimize it where possible, but priority is our people and our operations. Everything else is secondary. Adrian glanced at Valentina. Questions? She had dozens, but she shook her head. No, this is your area of expertise. It's our area now. He said it casually, but the implication was massive. You're part of strategic planning going forward. That means you need to understand not just the business side, but the operational side too. The violent side, Valentina clarified. Yes, the violent side. Adrian didn't sugarcoat it. That's the reality of what we're building. Can you handle that? She thought about her father, about the blood in the sink, about waking up to gunfire, about the man in the basement Marcus had been questioning, about all the ways this life demanded pieces of your soul as payment for survival.
Yes, she said. I can handle it. The meeting wrapped up. Plans were set in motion. By midnight, pieces were moving across the city like chess pieces, positioning for the next 48 hours. Valentina found Adrian on the terrace outside their bedroom, looking out over the city lights. He'd loosened his tie, jacket discarded somewhere, looking almost human. You should sleep, she said. Can't. Too much adrenaline. Me too. She moved beside him, shoulder brushing his. Do you ever get tired of it? The constant conflict, the calculating, the violence? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes. But then I remember what the alternative looks like. What's that? Weakness. Vulnerability. Watching everything you built get torn apart by people who don't understand what it took to create it. He turned to face her. My father built this organization from nothing, died defending it. I'm not going to let men like Russo destroy that legacy because they can't adapt to a changing world. Is that what this is about? Legacy? Partially. His hand came up, fingers tracing her jawline. But also about proving something. To who? To myself. To you. To everyone who thinks power is just about violence and intimidation. Adrian's thumb brushed her lower lip. You asked me earlier what you are to me. I still don't have a good answer. But I know that the thought of something happening to you makes me reconsider strategies I'd otherwise execute without hesitation. That's never happened before. Valentina's heart was loud in her ears. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. Ask me in 14 days. Still holding to the timeline? Have to. Otherwise, I might admit this stopped being about your father's debt somewhere around day 3, and that would complicate everything. He kissed her, slow and deep, tasting like whiskey and exhaustion. When they broke apart, Valentina pressed her forehead to his. 14 days. Then what? Then we figure out what we're actually building here. Adrian's arms came around her waist, anchoring her against him. Together. Together, she echoed. They stood there as the city glittered below them. Two people who'd started as a transaction, learning to become something that didn't have a name yet. The clock was still ticking. Russo was still a threat. The families were still watching, waiting to see which direction the wind would blow. But for tonight, in the silence of expensive real estate and complicated truths, they had this. It would have to be enough. Because tomorrow, everything would get worse again. It always did. Tomorrow arrived with precision. At exactly 6 a.m., Adrian's phone rang. He answered on the second ring, already awake, already dressed. Valentina watched from the bed as his expression went from neutral to something colder. When? A pause. How many casualties? Another pause, longer. Contain it. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call, already moving toward the closet for his jacket. What happened? Valentina asked. Russo hit one of our shipping facilities. 2 guards dead, 1 critical. He moved first. Adrian checked his gun, holstered it. So much for the 48-hour deadline. I'm coming with you. No, you're not. You're staying here where Marcus can... I'm coming with you. Valentina was already out of bed, pulling on clothes. You said I'm part of strategic planning now. That means I see the operational side, remember? All of it. Adrian's jaw tightened. This isn't a business meeting, Valentina. This is a crime scene with bodies. Then I'll see bodies. But I'm not staying here while you walk into whatever Russo's actually planning. She met his eyes. Because that facility hit wasn't the real move, was it? It's a distraction. He stared at her for a long moment. Then something in his expression shifted. Not quite pride, but close. You're learning. Fast learner. One of my best qualities. She finished dressing, grabbed the gun from her nightstand. What's the real target? I don't know yet, but you're right. Russo's not stupid enough to think hitting one facility would cripple us. He's pulling our attention somewhere while he sets up something else. Adrian's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, frowned. Castellano's asking for an emergency meeting. Neutral ground. That's suspicious timing. Very. Adrian texted something back, then looked at Valentina. If you're coming, you follow my lead exactly. No improvising, no heroics. Understood? Understood. They took 2 SUVs, armed guards in both. The shipping facility was on the waterfront, surrounded by police tape and flashing lights. Adrian had people inside the department who'd contained the official investigation, but the scene itself was chaos. Valentina had seen crime scene photos before, sanitized images and reports. This was different. Blood pooled on concrete, still wet, reflecting emergency lights.
One of the guards had been shot execution style, the other looked like he'd tried to run. The third, the critical one, had already been airlifted to a private hospital. Jesus, Valentina breathed. Welcome to the operational side. Adrian was all business, conferring with his people, examining the scene with cold efficiency. Time of attack? 0430, they came through the north entrance, disabled cameras first. Marcus pointed to severed cables. Professional work. Military training, probably. Russo doesn't have people with that skill set. Adrian crouched near one of the bodies, studying the wound pattern. He outsourced this. To who? That's the question. Adrian stood, dusting off his hands. What did they take? Nothing. That's what's strange. Marcus pulled up footage on a tablet. They hit hard, killed our people, then left. Didn't touch the shipments, didn't access the office, didn't plan anything we can find. So it was purely a message. Adrian's expression went darker. Or a distraction, like Valentina said. What time's the meeting with Castellano? He wants noon, the old restaurant on 5th, the one his family owns. Adrian checked his watch. That gives us 5 hours. Pull surveillance on all our critical infrastructure. If Russo's planning something bigger, I want to know before it happens. They spent those 5 hours in controlled chaos. Every facility, every warehouse, every operation got locked down. Additional security deployed, systems checked and rechecked. Adrian moved through it all with the kind of focus that made Valentina understand exactly why people were terrified of him. He wasn't cruel. He was efficient. And efficiency in this context meant people disappeared when they became problems. At 11:30, they headed to the restaurant. Valentina had expected something dramatic. Abandoned building, shadowy back room. Instead, it was a family Italian place, red checkered tablecloths, and the smell of garlic bread. Castellano was already there, sitting in a corner booth with Sofia beside him. Adrian, Vincent stood, offering his hand. Thank you for coming on short notice. Let's skip the pleasantries, Vincent. Why are we here? Because Russo's overstepped, and the families need to address it before this escalates into something none of us can contain. Castellano gestured to the booth. Sit, please. Adrian slid in, Valentina beside him. Sofia's eyes tracked her with undisguised interest. You brought your wife to a war council, Sofia observed. Bold choice. My wife goes where I go. We established this already. Adrian's hand found Valentina's under the table. What's Russo's play, Vincent? That's what I'm trying to figure out. The facility hit this morning was reckless, sloppy even, not his usual style. Castellano leaned forward. Which makes me think he's either desperate or he's got backing we don't know about. Backing from who? That's the question. I've reached out to our contacts in Boston, Philly, Baltimore. No one's claiming involvement, but someone's funding this operation. Russo doesn't have the capital for military-grade contractors. Adrian's eyes narrowed. You think someone's using him as a proxy? I think someone wants to see if you're as vulnerable as you look. The marriage, the expansion, the aggressive infrastructure plays, it suggests you're either very strong or very overextended. Russo's the test case. And if I handle Russo, then whoever's backing him will know you're the former, not the latter. Castellano's expression was grave. But if you slip, if you show weakness, they'll come for you directly. And it won't be 4 men over your wall. It'll be a coordinated assault designed to eliminate you entirely. Valentina felt Adrian's grip tighten on her hand. What do you want, Vincent? You didn't call this meeting to warn me out of kindness. No. I called it because a war between you and Russo destabilizes the entire region. It's bad for business, brings unnecessary attention, forces people to take sides when most of us would rather maintain neutrality. Castellano pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. I'm proposing a mediated resolution. You, Russo, 3 neutral family representatives. We hash this out formally, establish boundaries, create enforceable agreements. Adrian didn't touch the folder. You're asking me to negotiate with a man who killed 2 of my people this morning. I'm asking you to be strategic instead of reactive. Yes, Russo drew blood, but responding with the assault you're planning, hitting 3 of his operations simultaneously, that's escalation. It forces everyone into a corner. How do you know about my plans? Castellano smiled thinly. Because I'd be planning the same thing if I were you, but that doesn't make it smart. Adrian sat back, jaw working. Valentina could feel the tension radiating off him, the battle between what he wanted to do and what was tactically sound.
I need guarantees, Adrian said finally. If I agree to mediation, I want Russo's operation suspended. No more attacks, no more probing, nothing. I can arrange that. And I want oversight on who the neutral representatives are. No one with financial ties to Russo's territories. Reasonable. And if this fails, if Russo violates the terms even once, I reserve the right to respond with overwhelming force. No more mediation, no more negotiation. Castellano considered this, then he nodded. Agreed. I'll set it up for tomorrow evening. Neutral location, full security protocols. Fine. Adrian stood, pulling Valentina with him. But understand something, Vincent. I'm doing this as a courtesy to you, not because I need mediation. I could bury Russo in 72 hours, and we both know it. I do know it, which is why I'm trying to prevent exactly that outcome. Castellano's eyes flicked to Valentina. Your wife's good for you, Adrian. She's making you think long-term instead of just reacting. That's valuable. They left without responding. In the car, Adrian was silent for the first 10 minutes, staring out the window. You're angry, Valentina said. I'm calculating. There's a difference. You wanted to say no. Of course I wanted to say no. Russo killed my people. The appropriate response is overwhelming retaliation, not sitting in a room discussing boundaries. Adrian turned to face her. But you were right the other night. I'm making different decisions because of you. More conservative, more political. I hate it. But you're doing it anyway, because the alternative is a war that costs more than I'm willing to pay right now. His hand found hers again, thumb brushing across her knuckles. That's what you don't understand yet. Every decision in this world is a calculation. Lives versus money versus territory versus time. Russo killed 2 guards. If I retaliate, I lose maybe 10 people in the assault, another 5 or 6 in subsequent reprisals. Those are people with families, with value to the organization. Is revenge worth that cost? What? I don't know. Is it? It used to be, before. Adrian's expression was complicated. But now I'm thinking about what happens if something goes wrong during retaliation. If I'm the one who doesn't come back, what that leaves behind. Valentina's throat tightened. You're talking about me. I'm talking about us. Whatever this is becoming. He pulled her closer, kissed her forehead. 14 days was supposed to be a test to see if you could survive this life. Somewhere around day 8, it became about whether I could survive losing you. That's a problem. Why is it a problem? Because it makes me weak, vulnerable, the exact thing I can't afford to be. Or, Valentina said quietly, it makes you human, which might actually be your greatest strength. Adrian laughed, but there was no humor in it. Being human in this world gets you killed. Being inhuman gets you isolated, and isolation makes you predictable. She turned to face him fully. You told Castellano I make you think long-term. That's not weakness, Adrian. That's evolution. He didn't respond, but something in his eyes softened. They spent the rest of the day preparing for the mediation. Adrian pulled together documentation of every violation Russo had committed, evidence of the facility attack, testimony from the surviving guard. He built a case like he was going to trial, meticulous and comprehensive. Valentina helped, organizing information, identifying patterns. She noticed things Adrian's people had missed: financial connections, timing overlaps, communication patterns that suggested coordination beyond what Russo should be capable of alone. Look at this, she said, pulling up records on her laptop. These payments to the contractors who hit the facility, they're routed through a shell company in the Cayman Islands. But that shell company has ties to accounts in Singapore that connect to one of the Philly operations. Adrian finished, studying the screen. They said they weren't involved, but they're funding it indirectly. More than that, look at the timing. The money moved 3 days before the attack. Someone was planning this before you even issued the 48-hour deadline. Adrian's expression went cold. This wasn't about the gala or perceived weakness. This was planned retaliation for the port contracts. They've been building toward this for weeks. Which means the mediation tomorrow might be a setup. Or it might be Castellano genuinely trying to prevent war while someone else pulls strings behind the scenes. Adrian closed the laptop. Either way, we're walking into a room full of people who want to see me fail. That requires preparation. They worked through dinner, through evening, into night. By midnight, they had contingency plans for every scenario Valentina could think of. By 2 a.m., Adrian was satisfied they'd covered everything. Get some sleep, he said, rubbing his eyes.
Tomorrow's going to be long. Valentina looked at the man across from her, exhausted, dangerous, carrying the weight of an empire he'd inherited too young, and was desperately trying to transform into something that might outlive him. Somewhere in the past 16 days, he'd stopped being the cold stranger who'd warned her about 30-day survival rates and become someone she actually cared about. That should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the most honest thing she'd experienced in years. "Adrian," she said quietly. "Yeah?" "When this is over, the mediation, the Russo situation, all of it, we need to talk about what happens after day 30. His eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. "I know." "Do you have an answer yet?" "No, but I'm getting closer." He stood, offered his hand. "Come on. We both need rest." They went upstairs together. The routine had become familiar, changing in comfortable silence, settling into bed with careful distance that always closed as the night went on. Tonight, Adrian pulled her against him immediately. No pretense of separation. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "Of tomorrow, of what happens if this goes wrong, of losing what we're building here." Valentina's breath caught. Adrian Moretti didn't admit fear, didn't show vulnerability, but here in the darkness, with everything uncertain, he was being honest. "Me too," she whispered. "But we'll figure it out. Together, remember?" Together. His arms tightened around her. "Valentina?" "Yeah?" "If something happens tomorrow, if things go bad and I don't make it out, there's a safe in my office. Code is your birthday. Everything you need is in there. Accounts, contacts, contingency plans." "Adrian, don't. I need you to hear this. If I'm gone, you take what's in that safe and you disappear. New identity, new city, enough money to start over somewhere Russo and his backers can't reach. Marcus will help you. He has instructions." Valentina pushed herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "You really think I'd just run if something happened to you?" "I think you'd be smart enough to survive. That's all I want." "That's not all you want." She could see it in his eyes, the thing he wouldn't say. "You want me to promise I'll be okay. That whatever we're building here won't destroy me if you're not around to protect it." Adrian's hand came up, fingers threading through her hair. "Yes. I can't promise that. I know. But I can promise I won't run. If something happens to you, I'll finish what we started. The expansion, the infrastructure, all of it. I'll make sure your vision actually happens." Valentina leaned down, kissing him softly. "Because you're wrong about one thing. This isn't just your empire anymore. It's ours." Something broke in Adrian's expression, the last wall between them crumbling. He pulled her down into a kiss that was different from all the others, slower and deeper, and edged with something that felt dangerously close to love. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. 17 days, he said roughly. Not even 3 weeks. And you've completely destroyed every defense I spent 33 years building. Good. You had too many walls anyway. They kept me alive. They kept you isolated. There's a difference. Valentina settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. No running, no hiding, no contingency plans that involve me abandoning everything we've built. You're impossible. You married me. Worst decision I ever made, Adrian said again, but he was smiling. And the best one. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. Two people who'd started as a transaction and become something neither of them had words for yet. Outside, the city prepared for whatever tomorrow would bring. Inside, they had this moment. It would have to be enough. The mediation was set for 7 p.m. at a hotel conference room downtown. Neutral territory, security from all families present, strict protocols about weapons and numbers. Valentina spent the day reviewing everything one more time, making sure they had answers for every possible accusation. At 6:30, they arrived. The room was already filling up. Castellano and Sofia, representatives from 3 other families, and Marco Russo himself, looking smug and dangerous across the conference table. Adrian, Russo's smile was all teeth. And you brought the little wife. How domestic. Marco. Adrian's voice was ice. Let's get this over with. Castellano stood at the head of the table. We're here to address the recent conflicts between the Moretti and Russo operations. Both sides have grievances. Both sides have acted violently. The families believe a negotiated settlement serves everyone's interests better than continued warfare. I'm listening, Adrian said. Good. Marco, you want to start? Russo leaned back, completely at ease.
My grievance is simple. Adrian's been undercutting established territory agreements, moving into markets that were negotiated decades ago. His port operations are strangling our shipping revenues. His automated systems are making our labor-intensive operations obsolete. He's not competing. He's eliminating competition through technological and financial warfare.
And your response to this perceived unfairness, Adrian said, was to send assassins to my home and kill my guards. Proportional. I sent a message that you were overstepping boundaries. You sent corpses. There's a difference. Castellano raised his hand. Gentlemen, we're here to resolve this, not escalate. Adrian, what do you want from this mediation?
I want Russo to acknowledge that the market is changing, that territory agreements from 40 years ago don't account for modern infrastructure. I want him to either adapt his operations or accept that he's going to lose market share. And I want reparations for the 2 guards he killed. Reparations? Russo laughed. You're joking. $2 million per guard. $4 million total, paid within 30 days. Absolutely not.
Then we don't have a mediation. We have a war that I'm going to win. Adrian stood, preparing to leave. Wait. Sophia's voice cut through the tension. There might be another solution. Everyone turned to look at her. What if, Sophia said carefully, instead of reparations, we talk about partnership? Adrian's infrastructure is the future. Everyone here knows it. Instead of fighting about who controls what if we discuss how multiple families can benefit from the systems Adrian's building? Adrian's eyes narrowed. You're proposing what, exactly? A consortium, shared investment in the automated port systems, proportional profit distribution based on current territory holdings. You get capital to accelerate expansion. We get access to infrastructure that makes us all more competitive. Sophia looked around the table. This doesn't have to be zero-sum. Valentina watched Adrian calculate, saw him running numbers, assessing angles. This was what Sophia had wanted all along, not to stop Adrian's expansion, but to ensure the Castellanos had a piece of it. That's an interesting proposal, Adrian said slowly, but it doesn't address the bodies. No, it doesn't. Sophia met his eyes. But it does address the underlying conflict. Marco hit you because he felt threatened. You were planning to hit him back for the same reason. A consortium eliminates the threat on both sides. Russo looked uncertain. I'd need to see actual numbers, profit projections. I have them. Valentina surprised herself by speaking. She pulled out her laptop, opened the files she and Adrian had been building. Based on current shipping volumes and projected growth with automated systems, a 5-family consortium could increase overall revenues by 35% within 18 months while reducing operational costs by 20%. The room went silent. You've been planning this, Castellano said, but he didn't sound angry. He sounded impressed. We've been planning for multiple scenarios, Valentina corrected. This is one of them. Sophia was smiling now. Show us. Valentina spent the next hour walking them through the proposal, investment structures, profit distribution, governance protocols. Adrian added details, answered technical questions, slowly building the framework of something bigger than any of them had individually. By 9 p.m., they had the outline of an agreement. By 10, lawyers were drafting actual contracts. By midnight, 5 families had signed on to what Adrian was calling the Regional Infrastructure Coalition. Russo was the last to sign, clearly uncomfortable, but unable to refuse when everyone else had already committed. This doesn't mean I trust you, he said to Adrian. I don't need your trust, Marco. I need your compliance. As long as you honor the agreement, we're fine. They left the hotel at 1 a.m., exhausted but victorious. In the car, Adrian pulled Valentina against him, kissing the top of her head. You just turned a war into a business opportunity, he said. That was brilliant. That was survival. If we'd walked out without a deal, people were going to die, possibly us. Valentina looked up at him. Besides, this is better for the long-term vision. You wanted to control flow, remember? Now you've got 4 other families invested in making sure your infrastructure succeeds. Our infrastructure, Adrian corrected. You're the one who presented it. Our infrastructure, Valentina agreed. When they got home, Elena was waiting with champagne and a smile. Marcus looked relieved. The staff seemed lighter, like a weight had lifted. Adrian pulled Valentina upstairs into their room, closed the door on the rest of the world. 17 days, he said. That's how long it took you to completely change everything about how I operate. Is that good or bad? It's terrifying and necessary, and
He stopped, jaw working like the words were physically difficult. I love you. Valentina's heart stopped. What? I love you. I didn't want to, I tried not to, but somewhere between day 3 and tonight, you became the most important thing in my world. Adrian's hands framed her face. I love you, Valentina, and that scares me more than anything Russo could ever do. She kissed him, hard and desperate, pouring 17 days of tension and fear and impossible connection into it. When they broke apart, both shaking, she whispered against his mouth, I love you too. And you're right, it's terrifying. We're breaking all the rules. We already broke them, we're just admitting it now. Adrian laughed, the sound rough and relieved. 13 days until the 30-day deadline. Think we'll make it? With you? He pulled her closer, eliminating any space between them. I think we might actually survive anything. They made love that night like people who'd been given a second chance they didn't deserve but were going to take anyway. Afterwards, wrapped in expensive sheets and complicated truths, Valentina felt something settle in her chest. This was home now. Not the mansion, not the empire. This man who'd threatened her with 30 days and ended up giving her everything instead. What happens after day 30? She asked quietly. Adrian was quiet for a moment, fingers drawing patterns on her spine. After day 30, we start building something that lasts longer than either of us. A real legacy, not just money and power. What does that look like? I don't know yet, but I'm ready to find out. He kissed her temple. Together. Together, Valentina whispered. Outside, the city settled into uneasy peace. Inside, 2 people who'd started as strangers were learning what it meant to build something real. The war was over, but the story was just beginning. Day 30 arrived with morning sickness. Valentina barely made it to the bathroom before her stomach revolted. She knelt on expensive marble, forehead pressed against cool porcelain, trying to remember what she'd eaten the night before that could have caused this. Then she counted backwards, and her entire world tilted. 6 weeks since the wedding. 4 weeks since she'd had a period. She'd been so consumed with survival and strategy and falling in love with a man who dealt in violence that she'd missed the obvious signs. Valentina? Adrian's voice came from the bedroom, concerned. You all right? She flushed the toilet, rinsed her mouth, stared at her reflection, pale, shaking, terrified in a way that had nothing to do with assassins or family politics. I'm fine, she called back, voice steadier than she felt. Just give me a minute. But she wasn't fine, she was pregnant. In a world where people killed each other over shipping contracts and territorial disputes, she was carrying Adrian Moretti's child. She needed to be sure before she said anything, before she changed everything again. I need to run an errand, she said, emerging from the bathroom. Adrian was already dressed for the day, reading something on his tablet. What kind of errand? Personal. Woman things. I'll take security. Be back in 2 hours. Adrian looked up, studying her face. You're pale. I'm fine. Just didn't sleep well. Liar. But okay. He stood, kissed her forehead. Take Marcus. And Valentina? Whatever you're not telling me, you will eventually. We don't keep secrets anymore. I know. I just need to be sure first. She took Marcus and 1 other guard to a pharmacy 3 neighborhoods away, bought 4 different pregnancy tests, endured the knowing look from the cashier. Back home, she locked herself in the guest bathroom and took all 4 tests. All 4 came back positive. Valentina sat on the floor staring at the little plastic sticks that had just rewritten her entire future. A baby. Adrian's baby. In a world where children were leverage and vulnerability and targets. She thought about her mother, who'd worked herself to death trying to protect her from her father's failures. Thought about growing up watching love destroy itself in slow motion. Thought about what it meant to bring a child into a life where bodyguards were necessary and blood in the sink was routine. This was insane. Impossible. The worst possible timing. And yet, sitting there on cold tile with 4 positive tests, Valentina felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. She found Adrian in his office, working through contracts from the Regional Infrastructure Coalition. The past 13 days had been consumed with implementation, meetings, negotiations, the complicated machinery of turning 5 competing families into something resembling partners. We need to talk, Valentina said. Adrian looked up, immediately focused. That's never a good opening. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Something's She stopped, unsure how to say it. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them. Adrian went completely still, expression unreadable. You're sure? He asked finally. 4 tests, all positive. 4 tests. He set down his pen carefully. You were very thorough. I needed to be sure before I told you. Adrian stood, crossed to her, hands settling on her shoulders. How do you feel about it? Terrified. Excited. Confused about being excited given everything else happening. Valentina searched his face. How do you feel? Terrified, Adrian echoed. And something else I don't have words for yet. His hand moved to her stomach, palm flat against fabric. There's a person in there. Part you, part me. Yes. That changes everything. I know. Adrian pulled her close, arms wrapping around her like he could shield her from the world through proximity alone. I don't know how to do this, how to be a father in this life. Your father did it. My father got killed when I was 19, leaving me an empire I wasn't ready for and enemies I barely understood. That's not exactly a roadmap for success. Adrian's voice was rough against her hair. What if I'm terrible at it? What if I can't keep you both safe? Then we figure it out together. Same as everything else. Valentina pulled back, looking up at him. But I need to know, do you want this? Really want it? Not just accepting it because it's happening? Adrian's eyes were dark, complicated. I've spent my entire adult life building walls, maintaining distance, treating people like assets because caring about them was dangerous. You destroyed those walls in 17 days. Now you're telling me there's going to be someone else I'll care about even more than I care about you. He cupped her face between his hands. So yes, I'm terrified. But I want this. I want us. I want whatever family we're building here. Valentina's throat tightened, even though it makes you vulnerable. Especially because it makes me vulnerable. You were right. Being human might actually be my greatest strength. I'm ready to find out. He kissed her, soft and careful, like she was something precious. We're doing this. We're doing this, she agreed. The news spread through the organization within 48 hours, despite their attempts at discretion. Elena found out first, saw Valentina refusing wine at dinner, and put the pieces together. Marcus figured it out when Adrian tripled her security detail. By the end of the week, every family in the coalition knew. The responses were predictably mixed. Castellano sent an expensive gift basket and a handwritten note congratulating them. Russo sent nothing, which was probably the most honest response. The other families sent the appropriate messages, all carefully worded to avoid seeming too invested in the news. Sofia Castellano showed up unannounced on day 34. I'm here to talk to Valentina, she told the guards at the gate. Not Adrian. This is a woman-to-woman conversation. Valentina agreed to see her, curious despite her better judgment. They met in the garden, neutral ground, guards visible but distant. Congratulations on the pregnancy, Sofia said, settling onto a bench. That's a power move, whether you intended it or not. It wasn't a power move, it was biology. In this world, everything's a power move. You're carrying the Moretti heir. That makes you untouchable to most people and a high-value target to everyone else. Sofia crossed her legs, completely at ease. I came to warn you. About what? About what happens next. You think the families accepted the coalition because Adrian's ideas were good? They accepted because they're hedging bets. Some of them think he'll succeed, and they want a piece of it. Others think he'll fail, and they want to be positioned to pick up the pieces. Sofia's eyes were sharp. Now you're pregnant. That tips the scales. How? Because it proves Adrian's committed long-term. He's not just building an empire, he's building a dynasty. That's threatening to people who remember what the old Moretti patriarch was like. Sofia leaned forward. My father likes Adrian, respects him even. But there are families who remember when Adrian's grandfather controlled half the eastern seaboard through violence and fear. They worry the son's going to become the grandfather. Adrian's nothing like that, isn't he? I've seen him work, Valentina. I've watched him eliminate problems with surgical precision. The only difference between Adrian and his grandfather is that Adrian's better at hiding the brutality behind business language. Sofia's expression wasn't unkind. I'm not saying he's a monster. I'm saying he's capable of monstrous things when necessary. And now you're carrying his child, which means the number of things he'll consider necessary just expanded dramatically. Valentina's hand went to her stomach, protective. Why are you telling me this? Because I like you. You're smart, you don't pretend to be something you're not, and you genuinely love him.
That's rare in our world. Sophia stood, smoothed her dress. But love doesn't protect you from politics. It makes you a target. So I'm telling you, watch your back. Not everyone who smiles at that baby shower is going to be happy about what this pregnancy represents. Is that a threat? It's friendly advice. There's a difference. Sophia started to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you two might actually make it. Most marriages in our world are transactions that expire when they're no longer useful. Yours started as a transaction and became something real. That's powerful. Just don't forget that power attracts enemies. After Sophia left, Valentina sat in the garden trying to process the conversation. Everything the woman said made sense, aligned with what Valentina had already observed about their world. But hearing it stated so bluntly was different. She was carrying a target on her body now, not just herself anymore, but someone smaller, more vulnerable, completely dependent on her ability to survive. Adrian found her there an hour later, sitting in afternoon sun, one hand on her stomach. Sophia came to see you, he said. Statement, not question. Yes, she wanted to warn me about what the pregnancy means politically. And what does it mean? That some people will see this baby as proof you're building a dynasty, that you're more dangerous than they thought. Valentina looked up at him. Are they right? Adrian sat beside her, quiet for a moment. I don't know what kind of legacy I'm building yet. 6 months ago, I would have said it was about power and control and making sure the Moretti name meant something. Now? He took her hand, fingers lacing through hers. Now I'm thinking about what kind of world I want our child to grow up in. And that's a very different calculation. Different how? Different in that violence for its own sake stops making sense. Territory disputes stop mattering as much as stability. The infrastructure coalition wasn't just good business. It was a way to create the kind of environment where our child can exist without needing bodyguards at school. Adrian's thumb brushed across her knuckles. I'm not becoming soft, Valentina, but I'm becoming strategic about what I'm willing to fight for. Sophia thinks that makes you more dangerous, not less. Sophia's probably right. Desperate men are predictable. Men with something to protect are ruthless. He pulled her closer. I won't let anyone hurt you or this baby, whatever that requires. That's what scares me. The whatever that requires part. I know. But it's the truth. Adrian's hand joined hers on her stomach. I love you. I already love this person we haven't met yet. That love is going to drive every decision I make from now on. People who understand that will work with us. People who don't will become problems I have to solve. Valentina leaned into him, letting his certainty anchor her. We're really doing this, building a family in the middle of a criminal empire. We're building a family and transforming the empire around it. Important distinction. Adrian kissed the top of her head. And we're going to succeed because we're doing it together. The pregnancy progressed. Valentina's body changed in ways that were both fascinating and uncomfortable. Morning sickness gave way to exhaustion, gave way to a strange, energetic second trimester where she felt more like herself than she had in months. Adrian became obsessively protective. Security doubled, then tripled. He accompanied her to every doctor's appointment, took notes, asked questions that made the obstetrician smile with professional approval. You're very engaged, the doctor said during the 20-week ultrasound. This is my first child, Adrian replied, eyes fixed on the screen where their baby's heartbeat pulsed steadily. I'm not missing anything. They found out the sex. A girl. Adrian went quiet when the technician announced it, hand tightening on Valentina's. A daughter, he said later in the car. I'm going to have a daughter. Is that good or bad? It's terrifying. Boys I could understand, teach them the business, show them how to be strong. A daughter? He shook his head. I have no idea what I'm doing. Good thing she'll have me to balance out your very specific skill set. Adrian smiled. Very good thing. They named her Sophia, not after Sofia Castellano, but after Adrian's grandmother, who'd apparently been the only person who could make his grandfather act human. It felt appropriate. The nursery became Adrian's obsession. He personally oversaw every detail: security systems, air filtration, the specific shade of pale yellow on the walls. He interviewed nanny candidates like he was hiring special forces operatives. Background checks so thorough that Marcus started making jokes about it. She's not even born yet, Valentina said, watching him review another candidate's file. You don't need to find the perfect person today. Yes, I do, because when she arrives, I want everything ready. I want her world to be perfect. Nothing's perfect, Adrian, especially not in this life. Then I'll make it as close as possible.
He set down the file, pulled her into his lap. I know I'm being obsessive. I can't help it. Every time I think about her, I think about all the ways this world could hurt her, all the dangers I can't completely eliminate. So you're trying to control what you can control. Yes. Is that wrong? Valentina pressed her hand to his chest, felt his heart beating too fast. It's human and understandable. Just don't lose yourself in the controlling part. Sophia's going to need a father, not just a security system. Adrian's expression softened. You're right. You're always right about this stuff. Not always, but I'm learning. She kissed him softly. We both are. The coalition continued to function, though not without friction. Russo violated terms twice, requiring intervention from Castellano and financial penalties that made him resentful. Two smaller families tried to renegotiate their profit shares, arguing that Adrian's infrastructure advantages weren't being properly accounted for. Adrian handled it all with the kind of patient ruthlessness Valentina had come to recognize as his signature style. He didn't explode or threaten, he just calmly explained consequences, demonstrated why compliance was in everyone's best interest, and occasionally made examples of people who pushed too far. She sat in on most of the meetings now, her pregnancy visible but not limiting. Some of the older family representatives initially tried to dismiss her presence. They learned quickly that was a mistake. The automated systems aren't showing projected efficiency gains, one of Russo's accountants said during a quarterly review. We're seeing only 22% cost reduction instead of the promised 30%. That's because your operation hasn't fully implemented the staff retraining protocol, Valentina replied, pulling up data on her tablet. You're running automated systems with manual oversight structures. Of course, it's inefficient. We don't have budget for retraining. You had budget. You allocated it to expanding your gambling operations instead. She showed him the financial records. That was your choice. But don't blame the infrastructure for problems caused by your investment priorities. The man blinked, looking to Russo for support. Russo just shrugged. She's not wrong, Russo admitted. We diverted the funds. By the time Valentina hit 30 weeks, she'd become as integral to coalition operations as Adrian. People stopped thinking of her as the wife and started treating her as a legitimate partner. It was subtle. The way they addressed questions to her directly instead of through Adrian, the way they actually considered her suggestions instead of dismissing them. You've changed the dynamic, Castellano told her during a private conversation. When Adrian first proposed the coalition, people saw it as his project. Now they see it as a shared enterprise. That's because of you. I just organize information and point out obvious problems. You do a lot more than that. You make people believe this can actually work long term. Castellano's expression was thoughtful. Adrian's brilliant at strategy, but you're better at making people feel invested in outcomes. That's a rare skill. My mother used to say the same thing. She ran a community center before she got sick. She could convince anyone to care about anything. She'd be proud of what you're building here. Valentina's throat tightened. I don't know about that. This isn't exactly humanitarian work. No, but it's creating stability in a world that's usually chaos, that has value. Castellano stood to leave. Your daughter's going to grow up in a very different world than the one Adrian and I grew up in. That's because of what you two are building. Don't discount that. Adrian proposed on day 183. They were having dinner on the terrace, watching sunset paint the city gold. Valentina was 7 months pregnant, uncomfortable, and exhausted, and somehow happier than she'd ever been. I have something for you, Adrian said, setting down his fork. If it's another baby safety gadget, I'm going to scream. We already have 17 different monitoring systems. It's not a baby gadget. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a ring, simple platinum band with a single diamond, elegant and understated. Valentina's breath caught. I know we're already married, Adrian said, but that was a transaction, a contract to settle your father's debt. This is different. He took her hand, slid the ring onto her finger beside the wedding band. This is me asking you to marry me again. Not for strategic reasons or family obligations. Just because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life building something real with you. We're already building something real. I know, but I want you to choose it. Choose me. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Adrian's eyes were dark, vulnerable. So will you? Marry me again, this time for the right reasons? Valentina looked at the ring, at the man who'd threatened her with 30 days and ended up giving her everything, at the life they'd constructed from violence and necessity and improbable love. Yes, she said, I'll marry you again, as many times as you want. They held a small ceremony on day 215,
just before Sophia was born. Immediate family only, which in their world meant Marcus, Elena, and Castellano, who'd become something like an uncle figure. No elaborate production, no political theater, just vows they actually meant this time.
I promise to protect you, Adrian said, holding her hands, to build something worthy of the trust you've given me, to be a partner not just in business but in everything, to love you and our daughter with everything I have. I promise to stand beside you, Valentina replied, to challenge you when you need it, support you when you don't, to help build the world we want Sophia to grow up in, to love you even when you're being impossible.
They kissed as the sun set, two people who'd started as strangers and become something that didn't have a name in their world yet. Family, maybe, but more than that, partners in the truest sense. Sophia arrived 3 weeks later at 2 a.m, screaming her way into the world with the kind of determination that made Adrian laugh through tears. She's perfect, he kept saying, holding his daughter like she was made of glass. Valentina, she's perfect.
She's wrinkly and loud, Valentina corrected, exhausted but smiling. But yes, she's perfect. They spent the first week in a haze of sleeplessness and wonder. Adrian refused to delegate anything, insisted on being present for every feeding, every diaper change, every moment. Valentina watched him transform from ruthless crime lord to completely besotted father and felt something in her chest expand. I never thought I could have this, Adrian admitted one night, holding Sophia while she slept. A family. Something worth more than money or power or territory. But you do. Because of you, you gave me this. He looked up, eyes shining. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm grateful every day. You survived 30 days with me. That was the test, remember? Adrian smiled. Turned out I was the one who needed to survive. You destroyed me completely and built you back better. Yes, better. The coalition continued to grow. Over the next 2 years, they added 3 more families, expanded operations into 2 new regions, and completely restructured how organized crime interfaced with legitimate business in their territory. Adrian's vision of controlling flow rather than territory proved prophetic. By the time Sophia turned 2, the Moretti infrastructure was so essential to regional operations that eliminating it would have crashed multiple economies. That made them simultaneously powerful and untouchable. But it also made them different. The violence that had defined Adrian's early years gave way to something more sustainable. Problems got solved through negotiation and economic pressure rather than bodies. Conflicts got mediated through coalition structures rather than warfare. It wasn't perfect. People still died when they crossed certain lines. Russo still caused problems that required handling. The world they operated in was still fundamentally dangerous. But it was better, measurably, observably better than what had existed before. You've changed the game, Castellano told Adrian during a coalition meeting. 20 years ago, what you've built would have been impossible. Now it's the model everyone's trying to copy. It's not just me. It's Valentina. It's the coalition. It's everyone who decided adaptation was smarter than extinction. Give yourself some credit, Adrian. This was your vision. It was my infrastructure. Valentina made it human. That night, putting Sophia to bed, Valentina thought about the journey from that first day in the cathedral, from the red dress and the 30-day warning to this moment, reading bedtime stories to a 2-year-old who had her father's dark eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked, appearing in the doorway. About how nothing turned out like I expected. Good? Unexpected or bad? Good. Definitely good. Valentina finished the story, tucked Sophia in, joined Adrian in the hallway. I thought I was trading myself for my father's debt. Turned out I was trading one life for something better. Was it worth it? Everything you went through? Valentina thought about the fear, the violence, the moments when she genuinely believed she might not survive. Thought about learning to shoot, about blood in the sink, about waking to gunfire. Then she thought about falling in love, about building something real from transaction and necessity, about the family they'd created against impossible odds. Yes, she said, it was worth it, all of it. Adrian pulled her close, kissed her forehead. I'm glad, because I can't imagine doing this with anyone else. They stood there in the hallway of their impossible life, 2 people who'd started as strangers and become something the world didn't have language for yet. Partners, lovers, parents, empire builders. Human, ultimately. Flawed and complicated and trying their best to create something that might outlast them.
5 years after their wedding, Valentina stood in front of the coalition at their annual summit. Sophia was in the audience beside Adrian, watching her mother with wide eyes. "When we started this," Valentina said, "people thought we were crazy, that you couldn't turn competitors into partners, that you couldn't build stability from chaos, that criminal enterprise and legitimate business couldn't coexist without destroying each other." She paused, looking around the room at faces that had become familiar over years of negotiation and compromise. "We proved them wrong, not because we were perfect, but because we were willing to adapt, to try something different, to bet that cooperation could be more profitable than conflict." Valentina's hand rested unconsciously on her stomach, 6 weeks pregnant with their second child, though only Adrian knew yet. The world we're building isn't utopia. People still get hurt. Money still drives decisions. Power still corrupts when we're not careful. But it's better than what came before. And it's getting better every year. That's not because of any one person or family. It's because we chose to build something together. The applause was genuine. Even Russo, who'd fought them every step of the way, looked grudgingly approving. After the summit, Adrian found her on the hotel balcony, looking out over the city they'd spent 5 years transforming. "That was a good speech," he said. "It was honest. Best I could do." Sophia was impressed. "She told me her mama is the smartest person in the world." Valentina smiled. "She's biased." "She's right." Adrian moved behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. "You took a man who knew only violence and control and taught him there were other ways to be powerful. That's transformative. You were ready to learn. I just provided the examples." "We're a good team." "The best," Valentina agreed. They stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Below them, the city hummed with the complicated machinery of life, legal and illegal, violent and peaceful, beautiful and broken all at once. This was the world they'd built together. Not perfect, but real. Not safe, but worth fighting for. Not what either of them had expected, but somehow exactly what they'd needed. "I love you," Adrian said quietly. "More every day. I love you too, even when you're being impossible. Especially then." "Especially then," Valentina echoed. Sophia came running onto the balcony, demanding attention, and they folded her into their embrace. A family built from ashes and necessity and the improbable decision to trust each other when trust seemed impossible. Years later, when people asked Valentina about those 30 days that had changed everything, she'd think about that first warning in the cathedral, about Adrian telling her most people didn't survive, that she'd either adapt or shatter. She'd done neither. She'd transformed. And in transforming, she'd helped transform everything around her. That was the real lesson buried in all the violence and fear and impossible odds. People weren't fixed. Situations weren't permanent. The world could be bent towards something better if you were willing to do the work, take the risks, love someone enough to change everything. The 30-day timeline had been a test, but not the test Adrian thought he was giving. It was a test of whether two people could start from transaction and build toward transcendence, whether power could serve something beyond itself, whether love could exist in a world built on violence and still mean something real. They'd passed. Not perfectly. Not without scars, but genuinely, honestly, impossibly. And that, Valentina thought, watching her family against the backdrop of everything they'd built, was the only happy ending that mattered. Not perfection, just people trying their best, loving each other, building something better. Together. Always together.